What's going on, guys? Welcome back here after a week off here to another installment of Honest and Uneducated, the show where we talk about anything from movies, movie news, video games, comic books, collectibles, all sorts of fun stuff like that. We got a ton of a lot of news just surrounding the current state of movies, some lawsuits here and there, some actors being pretty upset but not causing some lawsuits. Just a lot of stuff you probably know what we're talking about. We got some new info on that, the Scarlet Johansson stuff. The star of Simu-Liu, I believe his name is, of Shang-Chi has come out and made some comments in regards to this whole issue. So we got some updates on that. We got a just recently dropped. We're going to talk about first here off the top is potentially our first look at Oscar Isaac in the Moon Knight series. We'll look at that here in just a second. But before we get into anything here, before I just start talking about the entire show without doing the show, joining me today is none other than Rick Metz himself. How you doing today, Rick?
I'm good. Glad to be back.
That's right. We had like I said off the top, we had a little bit of a week off here. Realistically,
summer break.
Well, I was thinking about it, and realistically, before I decided to not do the show last week, I looked back and I was like, "There's really not a lot to talk about anyway." It was a lot of the same stuff that we talked about the week before.
Yeah.
Which is kind of how it is now in all reality. There's a lot of little things here and there, like Venom got pushed back, but it's just 3 weeks.
Right.
New guys coming out, that's looking good. There was a little thing, the director of Free Guy, Sean Levy, said that at one point he actually proposed to Disney and asked them you want to just go ahead and put this thing on Disney Plus? And they were like, nah, we're not going to do that. We think this could be a franchise, so we're going to give it a theatrical run. Yeah, so it was pretty cool, but I mean, it's just a bunch of little things like that where it's like, well, that's cool, but I don't know if we can make a 15, 20-minute segment out of it.
Right.
You know what I mean? But nevertheless, we also have John Knight himself here. How you doing today, John?
I'm good. I'm glad to be back. It feels like we've missed more than just a week for some reason.
Really
I don't
does.
know. This break feels like it's been longer.
It's probably because we didn't stream too, because the week before, I think
Sure.
we streamed and then didn't do the show, or vice versa. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And this week we didn't do either, so then it just felt like a bigger gap. I don't know. It
Yeah,
does
that's
feel
true.
like it's been a minute though.
It does.
It really does.
Mhm.
Nevertheless, we're here now, and we got some stuff to discuss here. But first, guys, do not forget that you can submit topics and questions to the show for us to address by emailing us at honestanduneducated@gmail.com. That's honestanduneducated@gmail.com. Also, you can check out if you can't always watch this here on YouTube, there is an audio only version, just like on a podcast. So you can get on iTunes, Spotify, whatever your podcast platform of choice is. Search Honest and Uneducated and subscribe to the podcast feed for you to have it on the go. But like I said, we do have our first look at what is supposed to be Oscar Isaac in the Moon Knight suit. So there's been a lot of it just came out. I think it dropped last day. It quote unquote leaked out. So you always got to take it with a grain of salt. But I was trying to dig through some cosplay of Moon Knight out there, and frankly, this does look better than any other cosplay I've ever seen of it. So if this is just cosplay and not official, it's really good cosplay.
You really wrecked that bathroom.
Yeah. The thing is here with this picture, I'll bring it up now. This may inevitably end up having to get cut out if Marvel comes a knocking. This might get claimed, so I might have to end up cutting this segment out. So enjoy it while you can. But nevertheless, this is what the picture that's been going around of this supposed Moon Knight suit.
I put money on it that it's a real picture.
I agree. I would put some. I don't know how much money, but I would put $5.
Yeah, I was gonna say $10.
I'd say it's worth a $5 gamble. I would say this is probably legitimate.
Yeah,
I like that they've gone in and lit up the eyes, because that's what Marvel did with both Deadpool and Spider-Man. They animate the eyes, so I like that approach. I really wish DC would get on that with Batman.
Yeah,
I'd like to see Batman
the white
have
eyes.
the white eyes. If it looks good, I could honestly see the argument of they try to ground all these Batman movies, so maybe having his eyes light up and be animated is you have to suspend your disbelief a little bit more than they want you to.
Well, look at Deadpool though. They're massive.
But Deadpool breaks the fourth wall. That's my
True.
point. With the Batman stuff, they always make it grounded and want to make it feel real. So I think that would be the main reason that they wouldn't animate the eyes, because then,
It'd
like
be
I said,
such a simple thing though, because when people think of Batman, whether it be animated or comic books, I feel like you think of white eyes. Like I used to always think as a little kid, I'm not even joking. I was like, does he just like roll his eyes back in his head? Like,
well, I
like,
think it's safe to say though that none of the Batman movies have suffered because his eyes weren't white.
no.
And I think that's the main point. It's like they don't really need to do it. I think it would look cool because they kind of Chris Nolan actually kind of did it in The Dark Knight when he put on the sonar part of his
We did it in
little
Batman
things.
vs Superman too when he was on his armor.
Yeah, and the heavier armor, because
Yeah.
in that situation it was practical. You know what I mean? It wasn't like, because that's what I mean with like with this or with honestly, I'd like to see how this show ends up turning up, because it is in the Marvel universe, so we know it's kind of cosmic and crazy, and a bunch of stuff's going on right now. So that's someone's eyes lighting up white.
It's not out of the realm of possibility.
It's not very far fetched, so they could still make it feel pretty grounded and have his eyes light up and be animated. So I don't know. I would like to see I just in the end, I would like to see a Batman one with it. Like I would guarantee you, if they ever made that Batman Beyond movie, his eyes would be lit up white and animated,
What you
like
think? Yeah.
100%. If they at least made like the suit look good and make it stayed more true to it instead of making that Hot Toys Batman Beyond nonsense.
Solid black.
Yeah, just like a black tactical suit kind of thing.
Yeah.
Because if they ever made a Batman Beyond movie, the suit should just be like Tony Stark's nanotech suit. That's just what it should do. Same with Blue Beetle. It should just, yep, and there it is. And it's just
Yeah.
super form fitting. Looks fake because it is fake. You know?
Like Black Panther, kind of like.
Yeah, in all honesty, how that works and how it all works. Like, if anything, it would look way more like the Black Panther suit as
Yeah.
opposed to the Iron Man one.
At least like the patterns on it,
Yeah.
if there were.
But it's like super form fitting. There's no joints anywhere or anything like in the armor suits and whatnot. John, what do you think of this Moon Knight official, unofficial? What do you think about it? You think it's real? Do you think it looks good?
Yeah, I mean, it could be. I think it looks fine. I don't know. I'm holding my judgment, I guess, until I see like an official reveal, official photo or scene, live action clip or something. Because like I was hoping for something more, maybe more a little stark white. I like the idea of it being like just the contrast of that bright white costume against the night, which is when he operates. Like I think that has a very striking imagery to it, and so to see them kind of dirty it up or grime it up, like I don't know. I don't know what they're going for. I don't know why they would make that difference. Or make that change. So, you know, I'm trying to give him the benefit. I mean, it's Disney or it's Marvel at least. And so far they haven't led me astray. So I'm trying to hold off and wait until I see something maybe a little more definitive.
Definitely not with costumes. I say they've knocked it out of the park with all their costumes. Other than, and granted, this is like hindsight 2020 stuff and looking back in retrospect. And they even poked fun at this themselves. But that godforsaken Avengers Captain America costume.
Oh God!
Like that was the only one where there was like
Perfect blue.
that
Just
was not as good. Like
you
missed the mark on that one.
I see the
but-
pictures from the original Avengers where they're like all circled up in the Battle of New York scene. You look at it and it's just like it looks so cheesy almost.
And
because
his
it's like 10 years old.
why he wouldn't have just like there's no padding, there was nothing on it was literally
It was just
like
like a spandex suit.
it was literally a spandex suit for the most part. Like it was the suit he was wearing in First Avenger was light years better, and it was much more practical and real looking. But then it goes to this thing where it's just like he looks like a Barbie doll.
He really
Like
does.
it's just, and like it
just looks
didn't
fake.
bother me when I was watching everything, but like in retrospect, even Chris Evans has said, and even in Endgame, he's like, "Oh my god, I wore this." You know, like they even made fun of it, like America's ass. You know, but I made the comment to your point. Oh, what were you saying?
I never thought the suit itself. It could have done. I thought the biggest problem with that suit was the cowl. The cowl was just so.
No, exactly, but it's because the padding on the suit was non-existent. So the cowl, being that hard cowl, it
Just
made
didn't
it
fit.
stick out.
Yeah.
But it was just because of the illusion of the suit being so form-fitting. That's how I've always perceived it. It's like you have, like, a helmet on, but then you're wearing, like, spandex, so it makes your head look stupid, like, it just makes it look out
It
of
looks like those
proportion.
guys that ride the bikes that you see, like, on the roads and stuff, where they're wearing, like, spandex suits with a big helmet.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Mhm.
But with the Moon Knight thing, I said from the start, the most interesting thing about the show, at least leading up to it without seeing anything with context, was the suit. Like, that I was like, "What are they gonna do with that suit?" Because, like, anymore he has a black suit, but, like, anymore, he's always been in the white suit. And I was like, "I don't think there's any way they could possibly do that white suit in that pure white that, like, you're talking about," because I don't know if you guys have ever owned white pants or white shoes.
I don't for a reason.
Give it a day.
I do.
Give it a day, that shit ain't white anymore.
I can't even wear white
Like,
T-shirts
Sure.
without, like
that's what I'm saying, like, my white shoes, if my other white shoe hits it, there's a black mark on it.
right,
You know
like,
what
how
I
does a
mean?
white shoe
It's
create a
like, literally, it's like, "Dude, what the hell?" Like, all I did was hit my foot with my own shoe, which is also white. So, like, my main assumption, like, from the start was, like, they're probably going to make the suit base color more of a gray color.
I like it. I mean, if that's a legit picture, I think they did a good job with it.
I think it looks good, and like I said, I was trying to look up some, like, cosplay stuff just to compare, like, well, maybe this is just a really good cosplay. Mainly because if I had to give this picture any grief other than the lack of pixels, it would be that it does look like he's composited into this scene. I don't feel like he's actually in this room. It feels like he's been
I don't get that.
photoshopped on. You don't get that
I just
feeling?
think the
I feel it.
graininess maybe makes it seem that way,
It
but
might be,
if
but,
he
like,
just went to use the
I don't
bathroom,
feel
though,
it.
that was a hell of a,
It
shit.
just I don't know. He doesn't look like he looks like he's been composited on it. That's the only thing. Mainly because too, I'll tell you right now, there has been compositing of some sort because there's no shadow anywhere. With the way this lighting is bouncing off the wall here, and there's lighting hitting him right and directly in front of him on the right side of his face, that means he would be casting a shadow on the back wall and over to the ground. And he's not casting a shadow on the wall or the ground. So this is this you can make the argument, sure, maybe it's just this light, but you can clearly tell there is a light above him. It's not just this light. That's what because there's this because of this light back here. So there's definitely a light coming at him from this angle to make it cast the beam right here on this side. Otherwise, because this light itself would not make that light ring show up on the wall there.
Yeah.
That's
That's
just
just
not
hard
how
to
it works.
say. I mean,
Either way, my point is though, I still put $5 on this looking real for the suit because, like, when you look at the cosplay stuff for
look
it,
at that one on the far right.
I know
Like, hey.
that's low effort Moon Knight, but this one actually looks pretty dope.
Not a big fan of the airbrushing, but it does look pretty
It
good.
looks pretty good. It's just like but this is the kind of stuff you get with cosplay, and then this is what's like this looks a lot more high quality production, like,
It looks gritty and it looks
it looks
dark.
I would again, put money on this is real. So, either way, I think it looks pretty good. I think everyone thinks it looks pretty decent, so I think it looks good. But the
Right.
question is, guys, you guys let us know whatever you think about the Moon Knight suit here. Do you think it's real? Do you think it's fake? Let us know what you think down in the comment section below. All right, guys. So our next main topic here today is kind of like a shift in what's going to be. I hate saying this term, but the new normal, as it seems, for the movie theater industry more so than anything, because ever since the COVID era happened, studios and theater chains, I mean, all the theater chains essentially had to shut down, obviously. But then so the studios had to kind of adjust, and now everyone and their mother has a streaming service nowadays. So they had to make a decision of what movies they wanted to put onto their streaming service or just put on a streaming service. If you're like, Sony doesn't have one still at this time, and they never really will, I don't think, because they've actually just made a deal with Netflix to have all their stuff go straight to Netflix. And so, why would they bother? They're kind of in a unique position because they're pretty much the only major studio that doesn't have their own streaming service. So they get to kind of just put all their stuff up for the highest bidder, and that highest bidder was Netflix for the time being. I think it was like a 4-year deal or something they signed with them. But nevertheless, everyone has shifted to what movies do they want to put on streaming, or they just want to push back until the theaters do open, etc. And then we know that Disney Plus has been doing the day and date releases, but you have to pay $30 for the premiere access, which has been pretty much a disaster for them. Like, no movies made any money doing that. Black Widow was the only one that made any sort of money worth talking about because it's the only one they even released the information for about how much money it made. But now, after they've done this for a while, and like Warner Brothers has done, their bit with just putting everything straight on HBO Max, seems like they've decided that, the theatrical window and releasing things in theaters is definitely the best way for them to go as far as making money is concerned. So, news has come out that Warner Brothers has made a deal with AMC to stick to a new 45-day theatrical window going forward in 2022. Not only with that, we did find out that Disney is also doing the same thing with Shang-Chi. So it looks like I said it's probably going to be the new normal kind of universal window. It used to be 90 days, now it's 45 days. So that's good news because I think in the end, the most recent example is Suicide Squad only made like 20 some million opening weekend because it was just there on HBO Max. So like no one rushed out to go see it. And it's kind of a shame. Now I have an idea about how this could all be fixed, but I'll get into that here in a minute because I want to hear what, RIk and Jon, what do you guys think about this 45-day theatrical window? Do you think that's good? Do you think just sticking to doing day and date is what the kind of the future is, so they should just do it? Where's your headspace at with all this, Rick?
I it's hard to say. I mean, I think it's all right. You'll just have to kind of see how it goes, and just everything's changed so much with this pandemic and everything between streaming services and theatrical releases and everything. It's just feel like we're in a new era of like the way things come out now, and it's just you kind of have to just roll with the punches, I guess.
Do you think the 45-day window is better than going day and date though?
Um, I don't know. I really don't. Like it might be. So it's 45 days after it's released.
So it's gonna before any movie is gonna go on any streaming service, it's gonna play in theaters exclusively for 45 days.
Oh, okay. I
It
mean,
used to be 90 days.
that
So
is probably a good thing because you're gonna get those bigger box office releases and all that, and, like, just like with you and John, like, I know John really likes the entire theater experience, and with this, I think, people will get that still, but still have the option down the road, which 45 days isn't that long. It's, what, a month and a half?
mhm.
Um, that's not too long to wait to watch it at home. I mean, how long did you have to wait before when a theatrical release came out for it to be released on, like, Blu-ray or whatever? It could be, like, a year or 2.
No, it was 90 days before. Prior to the pandemic, it was a 90-day window.
So, I think it's probably a good thing.
So the only thing that
45
I
days?
think is like I think in the current climate they're in now, with like the current situation is like everything is not back to normal yet.
No.
So the biggest thing that they're gonna run into, at least for a while, is for one, for the rest of 2021, they're not going to see the kind of box office returns, even with the theatrical, like even with an exclusive release, they're not going to see the kind of numbers they saw back in 2019 because a lot of people are hesitant to go back to the theaters right now. And some places you still can't go to the theaters right now.
Well, with this whole Delta variant talk too and all that,
That's
I
what I'm
mean, who
saying.
knows where we're going to be 3 months from now,
Exactly, and that's why we see something like Venom being pushed back 3 weeks, like because they just don't know. Like, they don't know if it, like is it they know, like, right now, probably not a good idea, might as well give them a 3
What was the
extra
term you used to use, like unprecedented times or whatever?
Yeah, that was a term that they always used to use.
Well, yeah, there was one they used to use specifically, like towards the beginning of the pandemic and all that, but like that's just what it's become, unfortunately. It's just
I used to say that because that was, like, the meme,
yeah,
like, uncertain times, these every, like, now anybody who went onto a stage for anything at all was just like their opening speech would have you could play bingo, for,
like
like,
these are
any sort of
unprecedented
announcement, and you
times.
put unprecedented times or uncertain times on your bingo sheet because everyone was gonna say it. Didn't matter what the presentation was for, everyone says it. Like, everybody, these are uncertain times we're living in.
Right.
But nevertheless, the biggest thing they're gonna run into with that, other than, like, just people people are just used to not going to the theater now. We are creatures of habits. And like for a year or over a year at this point, we weren't going to the theaters. And
Right.
now with like HBO Max and Disney Plus, the way they've been doing day and date releases, people are used to just sitting on their ass and watching stuff.
And some people like that. You know, for me personally, we talked about it before how John likes the theater experience, which I totally understand because that's a lot different than watching it at home. But, you know, for me, and maybe there are certain movies I'd want to see in a theater, but for me, it is nice to have the convenience of, you know, being a Friday night and saying, like, hey, I just want to watch this on my couch, you know?
Yeah. No, I feel you. I'm in the same boat to where like I love going to the movie theater, but I
It's
have a
loud.
77-inch OLED TV,
No,
so
just
like
throw
I get
that
a
in
pretty
there.
damn good experience sitting like because you got to think the as far as the whole presentation thing goes, and when you're like 30 feet away of a
You've got your own, like,
165-inch screen, it looks amazing. But when you're only 5 feet away from like an 80-inch
your
OLED,
TV's,
you're
like,
still pretty good.
incredible as it is, so.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So like I would never understand why someone would rather like if you don't have as nice of like a home theater setup
Right.
as like I do, then I would always be in the movies. Because there are some people who watch shit on their cell phones, and
Right.
it's like,
I don't get that. I
and
can
there's
watch, like, YouTube on my
that's what
cell
I'm
phone,
saying,
but
man. I mean, there's always even back in the day of like not back in the day, but like people would pirate with like a hand cam, and people would watch that. You know what I mean? It's like you guys need to have a little bit better standards. Like the audio quality is shit, and you're sitting there watching. People's heads are in the way, and it's like you want to do that other than just go spend $10 and just watch the damn movie. But I think the biggest thing they're going to run into, aside from that stuff, like people not wanting, people not being used to going anymore. Um, the biggest, I think, a bigger thing is as far as the studio side of things goes, and John, I'd like to hear your thoughts on this as well. Is what kind of movies need to go? Because Rick, you were kind of talking about this a little bit. You were alluding to it in a lot of ways. Is I feel like there's going to be a shift into what kind of movies are going to be successful in the theaters. Like they're going to have to choose, and you can kind of see Disney kind of has done this, but they're going to have to choose what they actually want to put in theaters and what they don't want to put in theaters because it's not going to get them the kind of return that it used
well,
to.
there's certain movies that, like, need to be in theaters almost, you know? Like, let's say, like, an IMAX or a 3D movie, which they're not really doing too much of anymore. Like, you need to see that in the theater.
If it's made for that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm saying. You're going to have to decide, like, because my thing is with it, it's like, are you going to get a big enough turnout to the movie theaters for a like an animated movie, like something like a non-Pixar animated movie.
Just like one of those generic, like, DreamWorks.
Yeah, like DreamWorks makes like a new thing, or like Angry Birds 2 or Angry Birds 3.
That doesn't
whatever.
need to have a theatrical release
Well, that's
in
the thing.
these times.
Yeah, and before it would go, but like, is that something that's going to get people to go to the theaters for in an era where they're not used to going to the theater?
Unless you're talking
I
like
don't
some
think so.
box office Avengers level movie or Marvel or Star Wars or something, I just don't see at this point a lot of people like doing that. But
That's what I'm saying. Like, I think those big tentpole movies will be the ones that would be successful going to, and having a theatrical window. I think it's going to be a lot harder for just like lower, but like indie films. Like, I don't think there was already a difficult enough time getting people to go out and see indie films before this.
yeah.
But now that everybody's just used to sitting on their ass and not having to go to the theaters, and like I said, some people still can't go to the theaters, don't feel comfortable going to the theaters. I feel like the studio is going to be in a tough position to have to say, like, well, what movies can we put in theaters that people will actually go out and see? Because right now we have Disney with Free Guy out in theaters, only in theaters. And it's, I think, John, you said it's only made about 20 some million, which is good for
26. Its domestic take for this weekend is estimated
Yeah.
to be 26 million.
which is pretty damn good when it's a new franchise. It's a one-off thing. Like I said,
In
off
the midst of a
top,
pandemic.
that's what I'm saying. It's in the pandemic. It's a new property, so like that is pretty decent numbers.
Right.
But would something else without like the star appeal of Ryan Reynolds, would it be as successful?
No.
Because we know
People love Ryan Reynolds.
exactly. Like Suicide Squad comes out and makes about the same amount of money, but Suicide Squad costs like $150 million to make.
Right.
So it needs to be in theaters to make that money back. But because it was on HBO Max, because of the time we're in right now, it didn't make is enough money, real in all reality. John, what do you think about the 45-day window? Do you think it's a good move? Do you think there's any validity to what I'm saying, where it's like it's going to be like studios are going to have to be a little bit more decisive on, for one, how they make movies, because are they going to spend $150 million on movies anymore when it's going to be uncertain if people will even go out and see it and support it, even without a day and date release? Because that's what you look at Free Guy. I don't know the exact box or production budget on that, but I imagine it was pretty expensive. I imagine it was between 1 and 200 million. So it's like, are we going to see as many of those movies? And what kind of movies are they going to be making to actually go into the theaters? Because I really do feel like anything short of your big tent poles, I don't know if people are going to be as quick to rush out anymore. This all may change. This is at least in the immediate times right now. Because we also saw with Disney, like they had like 2 or 3 Pixar movies come out, and they didn't even do premiere access on them. They just put them up, which I thought was really strange.
That is strange. I mean, the premiere access at least gives you the option to like make a little more money with it.
Yeah, and so it's super weird. Where's your headspace at with it, John? As a big moviegoer yourself.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm actually. I mean, to be honest, I'm pretty worried about movies in general and the theaters. And I was a staunch believer that once the vaccine was out, once people had kind of gotten themselves used to the way that things were now, that everything would kind of return to somewhat of a normal. I didn't think there was any way in the world that Black Widow and Fast 9 wouldn't get close to $100 million. When I thought they would both break $100 million openings domestically, and I thought that they would go on to have not maybe billion-dollar box office runs, but $500 million box office runs. And I thought people were eager to get back out and return to some normalcy of life. Apparently, people are eager to do that, just not at theaters. They'd rather go hang out with their unvaccinated friends and spike the COVID numbers, I guess.
Right.
But so I don't know. I mean, I'm trying to figure out how I want to frame all this, but Suicide Squad only making 20 some odd million was really disappointing to me, especially when you have movies like Deadpool and stuff that traditionally had come out and were making easily $100 million. I thought maybe half of the, even $50 million would have been some of a disappointment to me, but it still would have been like, okay, pandemic, resurgence of Corona with the Delta variants and whatnot. Like, okay, I can sort of understand that. But it's for it to be as low as it, and then it dropped off so much it's only making 7 million. I just thought there were more people in the world that enjoyed the theater going experience. And I'm finding out that's not the case. If you give people, it seems like if you give people the option, they're going to choose to stay home and watch it on streaming, which means that the theater experience just isn't as alluring as it's been dropping for a long time. And maybe that's, a cultural shift to the way we consume content, with people people for years now have been consuming content on their phones. I mean, my fiance, she watches, we have a 60 or 70-inch television in the living room, and I'll walk into the living room any time of the day and she'll be sitting there watching a show on her phone and the TV will be off. And to me, that's just baffling, because
That is
Right.
I want to, I want to watch it on the nice big screen. I want to immerse myself in the world, and
Not on a 6-inch smartphone.
I think I consume content much differently than a lot of people do nowadays. I think a lot of people consume content to just consume it and be aware of it so that they are involved in the social conversation of it. Whereas I'm more consume content to actually consume the content because I want to immerse myself in that world and I break from reality literally when I'm watching these things. You could ask me, like, there could be a fire going on in the house next door and I probably wouldn't pick up on it because I'd be so engrossed in the movie that I'm watching. So I think that my perceptions on how theaters and movies and things work going forward is just skewed, and I'm not sure I really know what I'm talking about anymore when it comes to it. It's just a little disheartening, a little sad. I think that there will be a place for movies. I'm worried though that we're not going to see movies like Endgame going forward because there isn't the justification for a studio like Disney to invest the $400 million in production and marketing for a movie like that, when the fact of the matter is it might only make, 500 million at the box office, depending on, how things go. Now, I mean, I ran some quick numbers, you're if $15 a pop for a HBO Max subscription, if HBO Max can get to 100 million subscribers, you're talking about, $1.5 billion a month for HBO Max. That revenue service is going to bring in. They will bring in $1.5 billion with a B each month. Maybe that's enough to justify spending $200 million for 3 or 4 movies a year that are going to drive subscriptions to that service or maintain subscriptions to that service. So maybe the days of in-game aren't gone. Maybe the dual release, maybe being able to produce an in-game movie and have it only make 500 million is offset by the fact that if they also release it on their streaming service, they're guaranteeing themselves that continued source of revenue in that arena. Maybe that's where the difference is. Maybe that's the equalizer that makes it so that we still get movies like that. But yeah, I'm having a hard time coming to grips with what actually the numbers are saying right now.
Well, and that's the thing. That's exactly what my fear has always been with it is studios need to justify the spend on these movies, these big ones. And if they make an end game and they're only going to get 500-600 million dollars, and that movie's not going to they're not going to put as much money into it as they would have before. That movie costs like 400 plus million to produce and market and everything. They're not going to be wanting to spend that much money if they're not guaranteed to double that or triple that. You know what I mean?
And
'Cause it's too risky for 'em.
So for me, I don't understand why that would be the case. Like, why would you not, like, you're saying that making $200 million isn't good enough? Like, what is the
That is what they
threshold
think,
for?
yeah.
Yeah. So I'm trying to figure out what's the threshold for what is good enough to make. Like, so does every movie have to have a 2x multiplier in terms of returns for it? Do you have to make at least twice what you put into it in order to make it? And if that isn't the case, if that isn't enough, if you're only making, 1.5 times your money back, does that work across the board? Do you just stop making movies at that point? I mean, Disney's not going to stop making movies, but how do you determine which movies get made and why? So that's why I'm not sure how those internal numbers work, how they rationalize, like, what movies do we go forward with and which ones we don't. Yeah, we can make another live action 101 Dalmatians and it could only cost us, $15 million to make, but it may only make $40 million, or it may, and then we've only made, 10 million on top of our production and marketing. But, like, I don't know where those numbers all fall out there.
No, yeah, and that's the thing that's like always impossible to really know is like what where are they at? Because like what they like to see is okay, we spent this much money on this movie, and like before they'd put it in theaters and they saw okay, cool, it made this much money in theaters. But now the numbers are going to be all skewed and a lot harder to really like truly read because yeah, they'll have like real time analytics. They can see how many people watch it, how many people signed up when X movie, was released on streaming, blah 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 blah. But the way the money works is just like fundamentally different when it comes to the streaming service. That's like a whole different division, like in the company. So it's like they have like their theater and production division that they get a certain budget to make X movie and stuff, but then the streaming stuff is a separate thing. That's like why Zack Snyder's Justice League was even able to be made because it didn't become a film production division spend. HBO Max covered the cost. That's what justified the spend. They really only did it to draw in subscribers for HBO Max. So that's the way they were able to justify the cost of that movie.
Right.
And if they're gonna do even if they stick to the 45-day theatrical window and that becomes like the new normal, quote unquote, for the theaters and everything, in the current climate, it's just kind of hard to say if it's gonna be justifiable because, like, look at Suicide Squad. Like, would that have made 200 million opening weekend right now with a just, a exclusive run? Like, because the numbers would suggest otherwise. Because 'cause there's been some movies that just haven't. But it's crazy because you got with Warner Brothers and
Well,
HBO Max, they made a ton more money with Godzilla versus Kong, and they did the same thing with it.
well,
This
I
is
was
an anomaly.
well, but Suicide Squad is rated R. So Godzilla versus Kong wasn't, and so I think that hurts it somewhat. I
Yeah.
think I mean, there were a lot of articles this past week about whether or not Suicide Squad was as much of a disappointment as the numbers would appear that it is. I personally am hoping that it's not. I'm hoping that there's internal numbers showing that it did really well on HBO Max because the other problem with Suicide Squad not doing well box office wise is it completely shifts the discussion too about what kind of movie how you determine what movies to make because Suicide Squad by all metrics should have done great. It not only has is it a major superhero film, which tend to be doing well. It's a rated R superhero film that had a lot of jokes that I felt were reminiscent of something like Deadpool, which if you watch the trailer, I can't imagine, seeing that. And if you're a fan of Deadpool going, nah, that doesn't look like something I'd be interested in. No, it's that same over the top kind of humor and action and stuff so I thought that would play well. And then the critics, the critical reception and the fan reception for those that did see it was all through the roof. Everybody loves that movie that's seen it. And
Yeah.
for some reason that's not translating into box office numbers. Now hopefully it's translating HBO Max numbers, but and then the other thing I haven't actually the 45-day window. I mean, if that's what the theaters or if that's what the production companies want in the streaming services and they think that they'll be able to maximize their return on investment by limiting that window to only 45 days so that people are so that people will stick with the streaming services knowing that they get the movie a month and a half after it comes out in theaters, then that's great. My one concern is like, are theaters going, because apparently theaters operate on this razor thin margin, and hopefully they will be able, because traditionally theaters have gotten more of the box office the longer a movie stays in the theater. So typically that opening weekend, most of those receipts are going back to the movie companies, and the movie theaters only make money the longer a movie stays in. Well, if after 45 days you're kicking it over to a streaming service, is there some agreement that theaters are now making more of that front end money? At this
There's not.
point with the problems that AMC and Cinemark and all these other theater chains supposedly are having financially, I mean, you're going to have to look at the only solution to that I would say or see would be, Disney or Warner Brothers or those companies stepping in and buying the distribution, buying the theater chains and start managing theaters. I mean,
Then you run into the problem where you run into the same problem that you have with ISPs right now. The only ISP in your area is Spectrum, and Spectrum's dog shit, but you can't get anything else,
Yeah.
so you have to get Spectrum. So when the theaters start owning, this is why the Paramount decrees were a thing in the past, even though they've just been they didn't get like renewed or whatever. The Paramount decrees are no more, but the Paramount decrees made it to where a distribution or a production company of studio could not own a theater chain. They had to be a separate thing because what you'll end up getting like that same thing where if you have a Warner Brothers owned theater, guess what movies are playing? Warner Brothers movie.
Yeah, exactly.
You ain't gonna see
Sure.
the Avengers movies. You ain't gonna they ain't gonna play that shit at
Like
their theater.
MCU specific
Yeah,
theaters.
you're gonna have a Disney theater, and it's like I really wanted to see Avengers Endgame, but I only have Warner Brothers theaters within 30 miles. Like,
That's yeah.
and it's like, okay, that's just like a no-win situation for everybody. But that is a very real thing that could happen
I could see it happening
with
down
the
the road.
decrees gone, like 100%. I think it's idiotic for any like, if you owned a movie theater, you want because like you said, they do have a razor thin margin, so you'd want to be able to get as many asses in the seats as possible. So, withholding movies because they're not from your, like,
That's not
partnered
gonna work.
it's just stupid. Like, it's just like, you just
Mhm.
want more people to come in and buy popcorn and stuff because that's where you make all your money. Speaking of which, what AMC has decided to do, this just came out. I didn't have it as, like, a topic because I figured it'd probably get brought up in one of these many discussions we have about this stuff, but what AMC is doing right now to combat the, lack of sales, I guess we'll say, just to make more money, instead of making it enticing for people to come back to the theater running deals or anything like that, they're actually just raising ticket prices. So that's what they're doing to get more money, John. AMC is raising ticket prices. They're showing less screenings per day, so they have less uh,
Overhead.
and then, what
Yeah.
else are they doing? They're doing something else. They were and it's just like the stupidest things. It's like, you want people to come into the theaters right now, and it's like people are already not wanting to go, and
And they're making it harder.
yeah,
Yeah.
you're making it harder by playing less shows, and you're charging more money. Oh, and the concession prices are going up too. So it's like
Oh god.
they've
Yep.
just increased everything, and it's just because it's just like the studios, they want the short-term gains. This will get them short-term gains because they're gonna make more money as people come in. Yeah, great. And it's just like the theaters, they wanna be able or the studios rather, they wanna put a movie out and see that movie making money. And that's, like, the problem they're gonna run into is, like, when you're getting less money in the box office, it's like you, my biggest worry has been, well, what does that mean for what kind of movies they're gonna make? How are they gonna what are they gonna do to justify these $200 million movies? Because in the end, they're just the justification isn't there.
Right.
Like, they can't see an innocent justification, so that's what's always worried me. But this is a good segue into what I can't believe this hasn't been a thing because I told you, John, earlier in the week, it dawned on me what I know all you movie studios and theaters out there, this is exactly what you need to do. It solves all your problems. The studios can get day and date releases, you can get an exclusive theatrical run, and you can cut down on piracy. All by doing this simple thing.
This
Right?
one simple trick.
This one simple thing. Okay? Now listen to it. What you do something along these lines. There's multiple avenues you could do to make this work. But my theory here, my solution to the problem, if you will, was what you do. Say I want to go in and I want to watch Suicide Squad. So I go, the only way I can see it is I can go and I have to go buy a movie ticket. But what you do is you have a code on each of your movie tickets. All right, this is just one example you could do. Because you could do like a point system or something else otherwise. But I'm going to give you the like easy one-to-one solution here.
Lay it on me.
I go to the movies. I go to a theater. I buy a ticket to see Suicide Squad. Great. And there is a code on that ticket that lets me go and redeem said code onto HBO Max so I can now watch it on HBO Max because I have proof that I went and bought a ticket essentially. So the buying a ticket in the theater gets you the one-time use code to unlock Suicide Squad on your HBO Max account. There you go. That's your day and date release. So you're forcing someone to get access to that title on the streaming service same day. You have to go to the theater first, but then you can instantly unlock it on HBO Max. You're done. You can have that you could do it in many ways. Like you could do it for a 1-to-1, like I said. So if you go and see Suicide Squad, then you get to redeem it on your HBO Max account. Or you could have it with like a points-based system. So you have, you go see 3 movies and then you can redeem a code to get early access to any movie that is currently in its theatrical run or something. You can make it as granular as you want. Easiest example was you go buy a ticket, then after that you can just watch on HBO Max. You could also limit how long you can watch it there. You can do whatever the fuck you want, but that's how you get access to it. You got to go buy a ticket first, and then you have it on your streaming service. Now, to cut down on piracy, while the movie is in its theatrical run, all you do is you put a goddamn watermark on the movie when you're watching it. And the watermark would just be literally the person's email address who is signed up on that HBO Max account.
So that way, for piracy,
that way no one is going to pirate that copy because their fucking email address will be on the screen. That's how you do it. And it's only for movies that are in its theatrical run at that time. I totally understand because I've had to watch movies with watermarks on before. And it is annoying, but it's not a big deal. It doesn't distract you. It's most of the time it just pops up every once in a while and just like has it running across the bottom of the screen, or it's up in the corner and it's just there briefly and then it's gone. But it'll do that periodically throughout the movie because the only way around it at that point would be cutting out those bits and pieces and then posting it. Or you just have it on the bottom throughout the entire part of the movie, but it's just like, what is it called? Like translucent to some degree, so you still see right through it. But that is like literally, I thought about that and I was like, I don't know why they're not already doing that because that gives consumers an incentive to want to go to the theater because they'll know, like, cool, I can go see this in the theater. I wanted to see the movie anyway, but then after I do, I could just redeem it and I can just watch it on HBO Max now. So the only thing you're cutting out at that point is return viewings. But with day and date, you're already losing that anyway.
right?
So it doesn't really matter. You're at least getting the one ticket purchased by everybody in order to do it. So then obviously too, like, if I went with my whole family to see it, then yeah, I would only have to redeem one code and then I have it. So like but you're already losing that money, that return view money with the day and date stuff. You know what I mean? So I don't know why that's not already a thing because that's something that every studio could then partner with the theater chains and they could just sort that whole thing out to where they provide that's the only thing you'd have to really do is have all your tickets have the code on them.
Yeah.
Like, and that would be the only hurdle you'd have to jump. So all the studios who have their own streaming service who would want to do something like that, they would have to work something out with the theaters in order for them to provide the codes on all the tickets and everything. That's really the only thing you'd have to do. And I feel like that would make consumers happy. And I think that would make the theaters happy and that would make the studios more money because you're guaranteeing everybody watching that movie in theaters first. So you're getting a ton more money than anybody who wanted to see it. They're going to go see it in the theaters no matter what. Then after the theatrical window, it's just available like it normally is. This is what it is. I was just surprised that like I thought of this and it's not already a thing.
You think of a lot of things.
Like I know like the Powerpuff Girls show that they're doing, that was totally my fucking idea. Literally.
Stole it from you.
They literally stole it from me. It was exactly granted. They're apparently running it into the fucking wall though. Like they shot the pilot and it sucked. So CW made them reshoot the pilot, and then the star, Chloe from what's her name? Chloe Bennett from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Yeah, she's off the show now for scheduling conflicts, which is bullshit because you signed up to do the show. Yeah, it's like you signed up to do the show. Yeah. It's like if the first pilot you shot, they liked it, right now you'd be shooting the show. So
yes.
You don't have scheduling conflicts, or you couldn't have started doing the show. So
Plus, I haven't seen any trade reports about something her being cast in something else.
yeah,
So
like
yeah,
the conflict is that either she didn't want to be a part of it anymore, or they didn't want her to be a part of it anymore. Either or. I don't know which. We'll never know which because obviously they're doing the amicable thing of saying scheduling conflicts. So either
yeah.
way, it's good because it was my idea. You stole it from me, CW. But John, what do you being the bigger moviegoer here out of between you and Rick? What do you think of my idea? Do you think that'd be a valid idea? You think that
Sure,
would be
it's a good
like
idea.
good?
I mean, it's they do a version of that with comic books right now. Marvel and DC both at one point where you bought a
Yeah,
comic and there's a code in the comic to redeem your digital copy of the comic, which was a great deal because you could pick up a comic, you could get your code, redeem your digital copy, bag and board your comic, and then
yeah, exactly.
go back and watch it, read it on your iPad later on if you want it, or read
You
it
just
on
have
your
it on the
phone later
go.
on if you want. Yeah, exactly. If you wanted to revisit that comic at some point, you don't have to break open your bagged and boarded comics to look at again or wait for the trade to come out. So yeah, digital code. They do it with
You did it with
with
Blu-rays too.
movies,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Blu-rays, and yeah, you buy your 4K Blu-ray, and you get the code to have the digital copy. Which so yeah, I mean that makes perfect sense. It's a great idea. Um, I, I don't know that they'll do it.
I don't know. I don't
Unfortunately,
know
I
why they're not already
because
doing it. Like,
because I think they'll. The one thing I do think is that they will say, well, but then John Knight can go. He can go to the theater and buy his ticket, get his code, go home, redeem his code, and then have all his friends come over and watch the movie. And so we're still only getting one ticket sale, and you're still sharing the 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 viewing experience with
oh yeah,
others, and then you're
but
not you're cannibalizing some of the theater experience by doing that.
well, that's happening right now.
Oh,
That's like
definitely.
that's my point with it is like you're still going to have that salute. Like you're going to miss out on repeat viewings, but if you're
Hmm.
doing day and date releases, you're missing out on that anyway. Because only
Hmm.
like diehard movie fans who like the movie theater experience, they're the only ones who are going to be going back to see the movie in theaters again if it's
Yeah.
available on HBO Max. Like,
Yeah.
if it's already available somewhere else, I don't personally know. I've heard of people writing into other shows and who have said that they've seen it like 4 times now or whatever, like Suicide Squad or something. And that's great. They need to get the money that they're due because there was really Suicide Squad was so good it deserved to make a ton of money. It's a
Yeah.
phenomenal movie. It's great.
Yeah.
But I don't know a lot of people who wouldn't want to go back and pay to see it when it's like, well, I have HBO Max. I can just if I wanna watch it a second time, I'll just watch it there. I don't need to go back to the theater.
Right. You don't
I
have
mean, so
to.
it's like you're already getting that, and, I saw someone who threw, a watch party, so, 20 people came over to their house and watched it. So you're already getting that with day and date. So I think at the very least, if my whole thing was for this proposal for them, I want to cut on this money because you already stole my Powerpuff Girls idea. So this is mine. I get a cut on I developed the code stuff and I get a cut for that. It's like the guy who created the credit card reader gets a penny every time or 1/100th of a penny every time
God,
someone
could you
swipes a
imagine the
card.
money
You know
that
what I mean?
guy makes?
Yeah, exactly. So that. I want to cut on this because it was my idea. But this would only is a justifiable thing if they are going to continue doing day and date releases. If they're gonna not do day and date releases, then there's no need to do this. But if there comes a time where, like I said, if we're in a situation where people just aren't going back to the theaters anymore, they're not making enough money there, whatever, then you need to do something like this because then you're at least forcing that ticket purchase at least one time, as opposed to if you do a day date, less and less and less people are going to go if they can just pull it up on HBO Max for free, essentially. At least with Disney Plus, you had to pay the $30 for the premiere access.
Right.
So at least they were doing that. But I don't know. The piracy thing, though, I don't know why they don't do that already. Like for everything. Like, because frankly, if I owned a streaming service like that, if I would have a watermark show up every once in a while, just like just here and
Like,
there.
can't
It's not going to ruin the
couldn't
movie.
people
It would.
couldn't people still go in and just cover that up? I
They
mean,
could, but then you
I'm
have that
thinking,
there,
like,
yeah.
if you're talking about like a watermark that only like one that was that overlays on the background of it, like that affects then the quality of like the movie and whether or not you can, you know, I'm not sure how that affects how much you enjoy the movie. But if you have one that just pops up for like 5 seconds every 10 minutes,
Mhm.
somebody could theoretically go in and alter that video file to eliminate that and just
Not show it.
as simple as put a black bar over
Yeah, they
it.
could.
And then you only have that black bar show up every few minutes. So it's you're either dealing with the watermark or the black. I just feel like that's if
The
you're already
problem
dealing
is
with the
people are
watermark, they're not
lazy.
going to. Okay.
Like, that's the thing, because the best
You
way
don't
to
think
do
they'll
it,
take the time to go in?
not everybody would. It would cut down on it significantly. It really would.
Okay.
Because if you put someone's email address as the watermark, people will be a little bit less hesitant to want to even try to do it, because if they miss the watermark at one point, because if it was me, I would have it show up in different positions at random times. You know what I mean? Because then, like, so at one point it'd be down in the left corner, then all of a sudden it'd be up in the top middle, and it would always go around the sides, on the, like, so it would be out of view. But you make it the person's email address, people are going to be a hell of a lot less likely to even bother doing it. Because, like, this is obviously their personal email, or one they're using because they have a payment service tied to it to pay for the streaming service. So, like, you could definitely go in and block all that stuff out, but because you're having it show up in random intervals and random locations, it would deter a lot of people from going through the effort of posting it out to share it out on through a torrent service or something. Because at
Yeah.
that point, it's like, how much time are you investing in here just to put this out there for other people? You know what I mean? Because people are lazy and people are selfish.
Right.
So that's the easiest way to combat it.
Yeah. I know theaters, I mean, movies have been talking for years about how bad piracy is, and I never thought it was that bad, but you know, there's a security guard at the place I work, and he loves this app on his phone. He's got this app on his phone that he uses, and he tells me about all the time. Oh, you gotta get this app, you gotta get this app. And like he was showing it to me, and like literally any movie that comes out, it like just shows up on this app and he can just watch it on his phone. And it's like
Like Usenet
I
or
don't
Cody.
Yeah, I was going to say it's like those fire sticks.
Yeah.
Yeah, this one's called Movesy or something that he uses. He was like, you gotta look it up. I looked it up. I can't get it on my phone. I don't know.
Probably something you
Well,
have
I
to
don't know
like
how he. Yeah, I don't know what how he's.
some
The
back
guy's not
way of
very
doing
tech
it.
smart, so I can't imagine it's something like Cody where he's, you know, jailbreaking a device and like putting it on. It has to be pretty dead simple. It literally has to be just an app he gets through the App Store or the Play Store and uses on his phone because this guy could not figure it out otherwise.
Right.
But I I just I didn't realize how prevalent that stuff was. And I guess I personally like I don't want to watch a movie that way. Like I don't want to watch Black Widow on my phone through an app.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
apparently there are a lot of people because it's free, they'll go ahead and
Yeah,
take that. That's the way
like
they'll
people are
watch.
lazy and selfish, dude. And it's like if they can get it for free and just watch it on their phone, low effort, like you said, there's no way this dude had to go through any trouble to get this app because he's just not the kind of guy who
Yeah.
would be able to do it.
Right.
So it's low effort, and he's just like, yeah, I just got an app and I can watch it. I'm
But
done.
what
Like, I don't have to drive my car to the theater. I don't have to pay the money.
yeah,
I
yeah,
can-
but it's
Obviously
like
illegal.
it's like you were saying like there's a disconnect between how I
Oh yeah.
consume, like you were talking about the people that used to buy the bootleg. Like
I
I'll
remember
admit,
those.
like if I could have bought a bootleg copy of 89 Batman back in the day, I would have bought a bootleg copy of 89 Batman today.
Yeah.
Not because that's how I wanted to watch it, but because I would want to watch it again and again and again, and that would
Yeah,
be the
exactly.
easiest way for me to have done so, would have been to get a bootleg copy, even if it was a handheld, and watch it that way. Like, I would tolerate that as a way to watch it for future viewings, but
Yeah.
it's
I got to
not
see
my
the
preferred. Like, I would see it in the theater first, and probably multiple times.
Exactly.
I got to see the Matrix like that before it was out on video. My friend was just like, "Dude, I got this VHS that my mom got me, and it's like horribly shot version of the Matrix." And we're sitting there watching it, like, "Holy shit!"
Right.
You know,
See, and
like
that like that
120p.
movie's so good. I feel so bad for you that's how you experienced that movie. I watched that movie on the biggest screen in my town when it came out, and not having a clue about it. We went to a local mall. The mall had the biggest screen in town at that time. The biggest screen for probably 50 miles for me anywhere, and we just walked in not knowing what it was. Just like it looked like it had some cool gunfights in
Some
it. And man,
CGI
I
and
came out of that movie just blown away, and,
Yeah,
like,
man.
I
I wish
can't
I could have
imagine
seen that.
having watched it shaky cam first.
I didn't watch
That's
it shaky
it was so
cam
bad.
first. I watched it on DVD like later on, or VHS, whichever. Once it officially came out, 'cause I was only 9
Mhm.
years old when it came out, unfortunately, so I didn't see it in the theater at the time. But because that became like quickly like my favorite movie for like easily like when I saw it on VHS or DVD, whichever it came first, that was my favorite thing for like ever. Like,
Oh,
up
yeah.
until, like, because I went and you bet your ass I went and saw Reloaded and Revolutions in the theater. Just like I did. 9-year-old me didn't know what the fuck the Matrix was to ask someone to take me. Like, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
once I saw it, I was like, "God damn, this is so good." Like, "Oh, man.
Yeah.
Like, this is incredible."
Whoa!
I wish I
Yeah.
could have seen it in theaters for the
Plus
first
plus
time.
plus my mind was just blown. Like, I came out of that I swear to God, I walked out of that movie, I wasn't right for 3 days. I kept going, like, "Is this shit real? Like, what
You
what is
were
going on?"
Keanu when they're in the jumping
Oh,
simulation, and
yeah.
he goes,
Oh,
"Whoa."
definitely.
Like,
Yeah.
that's it. Like, that's
Definitely.
that was
My
pretty much
brain that
everybody.
movie messed my brain up.
Dude, yeah, I love that. That's what speaking of which, we got Matrix 4 coming up soon, so I hope we get a similar
End of the
feeling
year?
to that.
End
I
of the
don't
year,
know if they're
right?
still doing it at the end of the year, but we'll see. Yeah, it's supposed to come out in
'Cause
December, but
it was supposed to be part of the release, right? But we
yeah,
haven't gotten a trailer or anything.
no,
So we don't
dude.
have a trailer for Spider-Man either. They're holding all these December trailers for some reason.
Dude, we're gonna get the Spider-Man trailer when
The
in like
Matrix.
a week or two.
Oh
I
yeah,
can
yeah.
guarantee it. Because
Why?
CinemaCon's coming up. I
What
can
is it?
guarantee
You
you
don't think they'll
Sony's
just
gonna
hold it
drop it
for
at
Shang-Chi
CinemaCon.
at this point? You don't think they'll hold it for
Um,
Shang-Chi at this point?
no, I don't think so. I think it's gonna drop at CinemaCon. Because they're
Mm.
showing Shang-Chi at CinemaCon.
Oh, you know what Marvel's gonna do? Marvel's gonna pull the who's got the bigger blank move. They're gonna release it the weekend of fandom. And they're gonna
Probably.
steal.
Well,
They're gonna steal.
when
It's
is DC?
October,
It's
middle
in
of
October.
October.
Okay, yeah, because
Yeah,
I think CinemaCon is like in a week or two.
is it?
Yeah, so that's why I was saying, yeah, it's August 23rd to August 26th. So by the end of the month, I would be willing to put not a lot of money, but at least $5 on the fact that we will have a Spider-Man trailer for sure. Because Sony is opening up CinemaCon and they have like I think like it was like a 2, 3, or 4 hour presentation, and they're opening up the event. What else are they gonna show?
Right.
Like,
Like
they got Venom, Morbius, and then it's just that. It's just Spider-Man. I don't know what else. I mean, they got other shit, obviously, but like those are the main things people are talking about, you know? So like I would be shocked if I honestly wouldn't be surprised if they were doing a surprise screening of Venom for everybody, in all honesty.
that'd be cool.
Because it's already supposed to have come out of this time, like by now. Like so was Morbius,
Or some kind
for
of like
God's sake.
sizzle reel that's unavailable anywhere else.
Yeah, I'm sure they'll play a lot of stuff for them there, and like I can almost guarantee you that Spider-Man trailer's coming. But nevertheless, let's move on here because we got some more stuff to talk about here. So guys, what do you think about all that? There's a lot to unpack there. We still got more stuff to talk about, and we'll just have to kind of see what the landscape is going forward. I think the 45-day window is ultimately a good thing. The only problem is people actually going to see the movie in that 45-day window, despite, not having access to it. Because now we're talking only a month and a half they have to wait. I think the studios are going to have a problem. At least right now, at least maybe this will all be different in 2023, maybe or 2022 rather, maybe 2023 as well. Like maybe people will be back and just used to just going out and seeing things in the theater, and they want to go see things in the theater. It's hard to say right now with all this, the Delta variant, people being used to being at home. I don't know. People are lazy. Like I said, it just is what it is. But whatever you guys think, and do you think my idea about the code redemption for going and seeing the movie, then you get access to it? I think that's a great. I would take advantage of that service personally. If I knew I could go see a movie and then watch it at home, like after that, like immediately, I think that's a great deal. I would be all on board with that. So whatever you guys think about all that though, let us know down in the comment section below. All right, guys. So our next topic here, I said off the top, we had some new news, if you will, about the Scarlet Johansson predicament. Some interesting things have come out. There was a Disney shareholder meeting where Bob Chapek said some things that weren't taken so well by a lot of people. And then it continuing to kind of just spread the fire of a Scarlett Johansson situation. But aside from that, I found something else to be kind of interesting that ties into this Scarlett Johansson issue. Obviously, if you're not familiar, the whole issue is Scarlett Johansson and her team, or her legal team, are suing Disney as of what was it, July 29th, I believe, for the day and date release essentially of the Black Widow movie, because it was in their contract that she would receive some sort of payment based on how this successful it was in the movie. Details haven't been fully released, but that's pretty much what it is. She would get back end points. She would get a certain percentage of the box office gross paid to her. And then some other comments have come out where, like, from people who are working at Disney that shouldn't be in their job, in all honesty, who have just come out and like released her salary information to the public, just kind of shitting on her, like, oh, she made this much money already. What's her problem? That kind of thing. Like, very unprofessional, in all honesty. But that aside, there was something that came out here that I thought was actually really interesting that involves Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson and the Jungle Cruise movie. So there was an article that came out stating that Dwayne. It was obviously brought up at some point. Well, is Dwayne Johnson going to sue Disney over the Jungle Cruise thing, because they ended up doing a day and date release of his Jungle Cruise movie? And the interesting thing is that he's not going to be suing them because they actually worked out a new deal and appended the previous contract and made a new one to where he would receive compensation differently because it's going on a day and date release, which is interesting because that's exactly what Scarlett Johansson and her team have stated. That's what they tried to do with Disney
And they
for
wouldn't do it.
for like a couple. It was like a couple months leading up to the release of Black Widow. Her legal team has stated that they have reached out to Disney to try to negotiate new terms because that's what they wanted to do with the movie, and they essentially were just ignoring her, just hoping she'd go away. And they never did anything to come back to the table and renegotiate. They just went along and did what they did. Put it on movie or put it on Disney Plus and then just went on, just whatever. And my theory with that, though, just quickly, and I'd like to get your guys' thoughts on this, but what this tells me, in all honesty, obviously I don't have any insider information on this. This is just putting two and two together in my head. The only thing I can really think of that actually makes sense as to why would they, come to the table and renegotiate with Dwayne, but then not do the same for Scarlett. And the only thing I can come up with is they plan to do more work with Dwayne in the future. So they want to keep him happy. They want to do whatever, they don't want to have bad blood with him. They don't want to screw him over or anything because they intend to do more work with him in the future. Whereas I think short term wise, Disney was looking at, Scarlett Johansson, the Black Widow character, as in the mindset of, we're done working with her. Why should we care? Her Black Widow character was killed off in Endgame. Spoiler alert. The Black Widow movie was a prequel, so they never really had any real plans, at least public plans, to do anything else furthering the Black Widow character. For all intents and purposes, she was done working with them.
Right.
And I really don't think there was any other. I don't think I might be wrong about this, but off the top of my head, I can't remember any other time that Scarlett has actually worked with Disney outside of these Marvel films. So that's the only thing that came to my mind is like, well, why would they do this with Scarlett? Because like she's worked with them for so long, they've had a really good relationship up to this point. Keep in mind, this has nothing to do with Kevin Feige and Marvel. Kevin Feige and Marvel wanted this to get worked out. Like, he kind of implored Disney to just come to the table and get something sorted out with Scarlett and her team prior to this whole thing happening, which again, Disney refused. So to me, it seems like that's what the option was for them. I don't know. I could be wrong. Could be, but it just what makes sense to me. Like, why should we? You know, we don't have to do it. We don't have to honor our contract. It doesn't matter if Scarlett won't want to work with us in the future because we don't need to work with her. We have no need for her. Black Widow's done is what it is. That's what I think about it. I don't know. Is that crazy? What do you guys think about that? Rick, what do you think? Do you think that's a viable solution? Do you think that's feasible?
I think it is.
What
Yeah.
led into it?
Yeah, and it's good that they were able to work it out. It's kind of unfortunate that Scarlett Johansson didn't really get a piece of that pie, but like you said, I mean, when has she really worked with them outside of Marvel or anything like that? And until you said that, I didn't really realize it, and I was like, I don't think she really has. So it's a shame she wasn't able to get on that same train Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson did, but why is it that like he did but she didn't? Could it be like the way they approached it, or
No, honestly, I think the only reason it is, like I said, is just because they plan on working with Dwayne in the future.
they
think that-
Disney knew probably they were done with?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I think
Yeah.
logically that would be if I was in a position like I would never put myself in a position like this. I would do everything I could to not be in a position like this, obviously.
Right.
But from the outside looking in, the only thing I can think of is if I was Disney, the only way I can justify them doing one thing for one person and then the complete opposite for another person, because this is essentially it's burning bridges, one way or the other. It's gonna make one party not want to work with the other party to some capacity. Now, granted, this could always get resolved. Like it will get resolved one way or another here in the future. Like I can almost guarantee you that 6 months from now, 3 months from now, who knows when, but Disney and their team is going to meet with Scarlett and her team, and they're going to come up with a number. This is going to go away, and this is never going to see the inside of a courtroom. It's just not. Like Disney's just playing Big Bird right now and making a bunch of public comments that are, again, really shitty and unprofessional in a lot of ways. Because even Bob Chapek in his little during the shareholder meeting, he had more comments that were just kind of like threw the Scarlett Johansson thing under the bus. He reiterated the comments of whatever the PR person said about like her not caring about the pandemic, and this is really like bad timing for her to come out and like not take into consideration the position that they're in. Like he pretty much reiterated those comments, which are absurd because in the grand scheme of things, I'm just to be clear, I'm not saying this is a good excuse and I condone this excuse that Disney is doing it this way. I think they're 100% in the wrong. Like, and it doesn't matter if you're in the camp that like somehow is not in support of Scarlett Johansson, because I know there's been, which is kind of shocking to me, there's been a lot of people who kind of agree with the mindset of that PR person who is like, well, what's her problem? She made $20 million. Like, that's not the point.
No.
If you had a contract with somebody, you would want that contract to be fulfilled, especially if it's not being fulfilled in some way, affects your income. You bet your ass you'd go out there and you'd fucking raise some hell. Like, you'd be pretty upset. If you get hired to do a deal and you have a contract that says X, Y, and Z, but then all of a sudden the company you're working with is no longer going to give you Z, and they don't do anything to renegotiate the terms of Z, you just going to accept that? Like, I'm pretty sure nobody here would accept that. They would want that to be sorted out. They would want fair compensation, especially if it's something that was agreed upon between both parties. That's how legal contracts work. This is what it is. So I definitely don't condone what Disney's doing. It's just the only real justifiable thing that I could see. Like, where they could be coming from is that, like, they just don't see that they're gonna be, they don't have a need for Scarlet anymore, so it doesn't matter if you know, we don't need to, re-up her contract, renegotiate it like we did for The Rock because, we're not gonna work with her anymore. What's the matter? Like, we can draw it out. Who cares? Doesn't matter. What do you think about that, John? Do you think that theory is crazy? Because I know you've been following the Bob Chapek stuff and all the stupid things that him and the Disney PR team has been saying. So,
Yeah.
where are you at with this
No,
whole
I
ordeal?
mean that makes perfect sense to me. It's odd to me that Disney would just arbitrarily decide that, okay, Scarlett, like it's like they have a list of actors and actresses, and they looked at it and they went, Scarlett Johansson, we're done with her. Okay, yeah, okay, just cross her name off. Like, I would think that they'd want to have the option in the future to use her for other things. I mean, they've got an entire Star Wars universe that I would think that at some point they made. She's a bankable movie actress. I mean,
Mara
she's
Jade.
she's a
Oscar
movie star,
nominated. Multiple Oscar
Oscar-nominated movie
nominations,
star.
if I'm not mistaken.
You have people cross over between universes all the time and work in different areas. So I don't know. It's odd to me. You've got what Oscar Isaac. He played Poe in the Star Wars movies, and now he's going to be Moon Knight in the Disney universe. So why in the world they would like just cut off that entire person is just weird. But it appears to be that's what they're doing.
I
I don't
just
know.
don't see any other reason that you could be in a position to justify their action.
Right.
Like, unless they just had no plans to ever work with her again. Like, that's the only thing that could make sense to me.
Or it's just I don't know. I mean, I get the sense just from my very, very, very distant, no insider knowledge, but just what you read and see and hear in trades and other things that the industry, the entertainment industry is full of just I don't even know what the right word, jerks, douchebags, scummy people that just don't have they have a serious disconnect from reality. The Kevin Feige's of the world are few and far between when you get into the world of the entertainment industry and the egos. Like, you have to have a massive ego in order to be in that industry, and the egos lend these people to think that they are more, I don't know what the right word, more important, or that that the people maybe it was a simple matter of whoever Scarlett Johansson's people reached out to at Disney to say, hey, look, we heard you guys are doing this. We'd like to kind of talk about how this is going to impact Scarlett's, payday, because she was banking on this being, and maybe the person, whoever it got to at first, was just like, screw her, like she'll take what we give her, like maybe they were just that arrogant that they felt like she's just an actress and she doesn't get a say in this. This is what we're doing, and this, instead of actually look at it and going, oh, okay, yeah, you're right, we probably should try and work something out. And maybe whoever the Rock's agent called got a different person that day. Maybe there was just a different person that was assigned to that account or whatever,
Right.
and that particular person was a little bit smarter, was like, hey, we may want to work with them further down the line. I don't know. I don't know if it was just dumb luck of the draw as to who handled each instance, or if it truly was some edict in the Disney offices where they were like, we're not using Scarlett anymore, right? Yeah, okay, good, screw her.
See ya.
Right. Which, the sad thing is, because of what you were saying, is like there are people like that. That's why in my head I can actually think of it being like the justification. Like, that's why it's happening. Because otherwise,
Yeah.
they're just shitheads. Like, because it's like, well, you have to have a reason to be. Because people are literally making public statements about, like, they're not denying that they didn't pay her. Like, they're owning up to it and saying that, like, yeah, we didn't do it, but look how much money she already made. Like,
Yeah.
it's like,
It's kind of a shitty way to do it.
it's a very shitty way to do it. You're outing someone's salary that's completely personal.
Yeah, just like,
information.
look how much money they made. They shouldn't be
They're
upset.
trying to. It's a smear campaign, and they're not defending themselves in any way. They're just trying to make her look bad. And it's like,
Yeah.
you're the ones who are in the wrong. Like, it's like, we didn't
Well,
ask you how
especially when
much she
they
made. Like,
especially when they tied it to COVID, as if
yeah.
somehow her salary and COVID had any kind of connection or
Correlation, yeah.
rationale. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's honestly too. I actually because when this news first broke, we did a video on it, and I responded to somebody in the comments because I think the clip for it was just like uh, something about like ScarJo and Disney or like end of I forget what it was. Like it was some thing, but someone said in the comments like I find it highly unlikely that this would be like the like have any consequences on Marvel or something in the future. And I was just like, I don't know, because this isn't the first time Disney has fucked over a creative that they had like an exclusive contract with. Because if you are familiar with Shonda Rhimes, she was behind like Grey's Anatomy and yeah, all that whole universe there. She had an exclusive deal with Disney because they own ABC. And part of like Shonda Rhimes's, contract allowed her to have like Disney season passes for like her and her family. And they go to Disneyland one day and the pass isn't working. So she calls someone at Disney and says, "Hey, can you fix this? Because the pass isn't working for like so and so." And then like someone on the phone literally said, like, "Don't you have enough?" Like literally, that was that was the
Forget the
quote in the
contract,
article.
like
Yeah, like she's like, "Don't you have enough?" Like boo hoo, your season pass isn't working. Like, don't you have enough, Shonda Rhimes? Like that's literally the way
sell
they
one of your
handled that
vacation
situation.
homes, like,
Yeah, like
yeah.
that, and it's like that's not the point. Like you guys said, I have a pass to get in here. Now you're changing the terms of the deal. Like,
Because you're saying I have too much,
Well,
or
yeah, it's
and
like
the
okay,
other point of that, and I think I brought this up, and we talked about this before, and we're going to talk about this later on too with another segment that I think we might get into, but um, Scarlett Johansson was part of Iron Man 2, and Iron Man 1 made a lot of money, but Scarlett Johansson was part of Iron Man 2, and then part of Avengers. And both of those movies, you have to remember back, but both those movies did well beyond what people thought they would do. Iron Man did better than anybody thought Iron Man would do, and then each successive Marvel movie after that, up into including Avengers, did much better than anybody thought that those movies would do at that time. I don't remember Scarlett Johansson going back to Marvel and saying, "Hey, you know what? That movie did better than it would than we thought it would. I need an extra 10 million. I need an extra 20 million." She's not going back after the fact and suing them saying, "My contract was based upon the fact that this movie might make X numbers, but it made more money, so I think I'm entitled to a bigger slice of the pie," which is essentially what Marvel's doing here. They're saying, "No, Scarlett, you got this amount of money, and that should just be enough for you. You shouldn't want any more." Well, she didn't want any more when you were taking the bigger cut back then. Now she just wants her cut that she's, in a sense, they're paying her for past work too. This is not, it's like, sorry, I'm having a hard time making a good analogy out of this, but it's like basketball players and like everybody, I don't know, people that are familiar with basketball. Kobe Bryant signed a massive deal for his contract. Like the last basketball players do this. They sign their last contracts that they sign with teams are like 4 or 5 years, and they're for obscene amounts of money, and it pays them like 50 to 60 million dollars in the final year of their contract, when they'll be 38, 39, 40, which in basketball terms is basically retirement age. And they don't perform at that level. They don't perform at a $60 million level,
no.
but you're paying them that much for the work that they did when they were 28, 29, 30, and they were winning you championships. And, it's a way of leveling the playing field over the course of the career, not necessarily that one particular instance. And Disney's basically pointing to this one instance and being like, "Oh, nope, we're only doing it based on this one instance and this alone." And it's a silly way to handle it, I think.
well, it's like getting a raise for like a promotion. You know what I mean? It's like if you go from if it's not a lateral move and you go up in the ladder, you get a pay bump because you're taking on more responsibility, doing X, Y, and Z. But it's also you're getting that promotion because of what you've shown you could do
Your
in your
capability.
your last 5, 10 years of the company or whatever. And so it's not like you go in and you want like retroactive pay for those 10 years. Like, no, that got you to where you are now making that money.
Right.
So it's
Yes.
like that's the same concept. It's like she got to a point in her career where she was worth being paid a flat rate of 20 million to do the movie, but she also was at a point where she was able to negotiate back end points onto the movie. And it's like now
Yeah.
they're just like, well, we already paid you 20 million though. Like, what more do you want?
And COVID's happening because
Yeah,
that
it's
somehow relates to
COVID.
it.
Come on. Like, this is bad times. Like, what more do we need to do? We don't need to honor our contract. Like, you already have money. Like, it's like so do you guys. Like, it's
Yeah.
like Jesus. But yeah, I mean, and then the last kind of thing that kind of ties into this because of the Bob Chapek comments, is like during that the shareholders meeting, one of the Bob. Did I say Bobby Kotick or Bob
No,
Chapek?
you said it right. You said
Okay.
Bob Chapek.
Bobby Kotick, Blizzard, they're going through their whole thing. So had Bobby Kotick on the brain, Bob Chapek, all bad situations everywhere. But nevertheless, Chapek makes a comment during the thing that got the star of Shang-Chi, as we now know it is pronounced in the film, Shang-Chi.
Shang-Chi.
But he made a comment that kind of got him kind of riled up because he says something along the lines of, here's the exact quote from Chapek. Oh, wait, no, this is not the Chapek quote. Damn it, where's the Chapek quote? Either way, they were discussing the release of the Marvel, like Shang-Chi is not going on Premier Access. It was just announced, we talked about before, that it's getting an exclusive 45-day window, and that comes off the heels of Warner Brothers and AMC doing their exclusive 45-day window for all the movies in 2022. So not the movies for the rest of this year, but all the movies next year. So they're doing the same thing for Shang-Chi. And he referred to that during the shareholder meeting as an interesting experiment. And what's his name again? Simu-Liu?
Yeah.
He comes out and says, "We are not an interesting experiment. We are the underdog, the underestimated. We are the ceiling breakers. We are the celebration of culture and joy that will preserve after an embattled year. We are the surprise," Lou wrote on Instagram. "I'm fired the fuck up to make history on September 3rd. Join us." But his main thing is we're not an experiment, dude. Like, this is a celebration of our culture who never gets this opportunity to have an entire, Asian-led movie and a big movie at that. And it's like, and just in general with the film, it's like, it's not it's fucking work, dude. Like, like, I know it's just kind of like offhand verbiage. Like, I'm honestly sure that Chapek didn't really mean anything bad by this, but like, it is like because of the current climate, I could see why someone would be kind of offended. It's like
Yeah.
it's like we spent years making this movie.
Only to
and
have somebody say it's like,
oh yeah, it's an interesting experiment. Like, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
So it's like I totally get where he's coming from, and it's like in the end, like I just think they need to keep Chapek and the other representative who ousted Scarlet's salary, keep them off the mics.
right.
Like, this will all blow over a lot smoother if we just keep them off the mics, because they're just holding shovels, like, nearby. I thought a spider was on me, so I freaked the fuck out. So they're just holding shovels, like, nearby just to dig themselves a little deeper every time they get on the mic at this point. And so they just need to go back to the days of being much more amicable and just saying, like, "No comments," or
Right.
"Talk to my agents," or, whatever. Like, quit coming out and saying stuff. Like, nevertheless, we got some more stuff to cover, so let's move on here. But guys, what do you think about this? I know it's a lot to unpack. So, do you think, Simu-Liu is like you totally in the right with these comments? Do you think Chapek's and you think they should stay off the mic? I kind of think they do because I really, in the end, hope that I'm wrong about the Scarlett Johansson thing, but I just can't find any other justifiable reason that the company would kind of be doing the actions that they're doing. But if you guys have any other ideas, let us know down in the comment section below. All right, guys. So our next topic here takes us kind of out of the realm of the movies for a brief second, but it's very, very connected to the movies because there's an interesting article here from The Guardian that was stating that Marvel and DC, like the companies themselves, are in a bit of receiving a bit of a backlash from a lot of comic book creators in general, for the most part. And the reasoning behind it, and this is a really good article, is like pretty insightful. It is fairly long, so I would recommend going through it and kind of getting like more of a deep dive through it because it does cover a lot of information. But the Cliff Note version is essentially that there are these comic creators. So, like all these movies, these DC movies and these Marvel movies, they make billions of dollars. And then they take a lot of liberties with the material, but most of it is always sourced from the comics. They use characters that, a comic book writer or, artist created, and then they use them. They might change them up a little bit, but they use that creation made by someone else in their movies and they make billions of dollars. And this article goes into that essentially testimony from a lot of these artists or writers who flat out, like Ed Brubaker, created the Winter Soldier like storyline and everything that you see play out in films. Like that was from his mind, and like you go on and see, but like they're essentially not receiving any of the financial benefits that the studio is
That
getting.
would piss me off so
Yeah,
bad.
so like there's the headline here is that like the thank you note in 5,000, there were multiple sources who stated that like their compensation for the use of their character or whatever from the comics in the big Marvel movie was an invitation to the premiere and a $5,000 check. And that wasn't like an all expenses paid trip to the premiere. Like they would have had to have paid for a plane ticket, paid for a hotel, whatever. It was just here's 5 grand and you can come to the premiere. But you got to pay to get there and all that stuff. So you're pretty much using that 5 grand just to come to the premiere for no reason. And it's like, that's all they got. Like, they go on to make $1 billion with Thanos, but the guy who made Thanos gets a $5,000 check.
And a thank you.
Like, and I'm just that was just hyperbole. I don't know if that exact situation happened, but they go on to, like I said, there's a very in-depth article here, and it does bring up the interesting question though, because even the article goes on to say this is that these artists or writers are hired as like freelance writers, right? So like they go on and it's pay for hire. Like they do the job, they get paid for it. End of story. Marvel owns anything that they do. So does Marvel or Disney or DC or Warner Brothers have any sort of obligation to pay them more money if it's being used later on?
I would 100% think so, but you'd think they'd have to sign some form of contract for that to happen.
Well, that's the thing. Technically speaking,
If
no.
I made Thanos and they're like, we're going to make a movie out of your character, I'd be like, you're going to give me like $5 for every time like his name, like just anything.
Well,
Like,
that stuff has to be negotiated in the contract, and you got to think here. These
you got to
people,
be smart enough to do
they're
that.
not hired in to make the next big character. Like the Thanos was never imagined to be a big screen villain over a 20 film arc in a $1 billion a movie franchise. Thanos was made to be a villain in comic books,
Right.
and he got paid to write the comic book. End of story. Like Marvel later on in a different landscape decided to, their studio popped off and now they're making all these movies. So they're using their material to make these movies. So it all makes sense. And honestly, as I saw someone else talking about this, and it does kind of more bring up a more of a moral obligation, more so than a contractual obligation, because I would think anymore, you would have to have going into a job here, something like this outlined in your contract ahead of time. And
Yeah,
I
100%.
do think that morally speaking, and the article does say that there is like both Marvel and DC have some sort of outline in each of their contracts that people do receive some sort of compensation if the character is used in some way.
And is successful.
In other properties. Who knows what that is? It's probably different for everybody, and like depends on how big the character gets and whatever. It's going to be unique to each turn, like each character in the end. So it's hard to have some sort of blanket contract made because they don't really know how well it's going to do. So it could get messy, but it does become just in terms of trying to like have correct numbers messy, not like messy because it'd be bad for one or the other, just difficult to manage for the most part.
Yeah.
It's like with Star Wars, and know that was gonna pop off and be what it is today. You know, just you make a movie, you hope people like it. Like that's why George Lucas at least had the foresight to retain those goddamn merchandising rights. Like he was like, man, if anything, hopefully this pops off and like there'll be a lot of toys. Like, and sure enough, he did, and that was probably the best decision he ever made was hanging on to those merchandising rights.
Right.
But I mean, that's the situation that you're kind of in. Like, if you're a contractor, you get hired to go build a deck. You built the deck. You're done. You got paid for it. You don't then get like more money each time someone uses the deck and loves the deck. And like, it's you built the deck. You're good. Like if they go on and throw like if a DJ comes out to my house and plays on the deck that the contractor made, the contractor doesn't get a cut of the DJ set.
No,
Like,
because that
you know
was
what I
worked
mean?
out in the contract.
Yeah, it's like you were just hired to build the deck, dude. I could do whatever I want with it after that. That's how all of these things usually work in any company. You know what I mean? Like in any job that you get hired to go work for a corporation, anything you do is owned by the corporation. So, I mean, it is difficult though in a creative market like this, like especially with the way things are nowadays. I would almost expect that they probably will have to like re-outline some contracts when like the ultimate goal is to have like a movie made at some point that could make billions of dollars. I would feel the moral obligation to kind of compensate people more fairly for it if that were to happen. But you just never know. Like
Yeah,
you never
it's
know
just
what's
hard to
going to happen.
say.
'Cause that's like someone who gets hired to write a movie gets paid to write the movie. They don't like 9 times out of 10, I mean, unless they negotiate something within that specific contract, they could negotiate back in points off on like that movie, but they know they're making a movie that could make up to X amount of dollars. When you're writing a story for a comic book, you don't know like comic books don't really sell that well, so you can't really take back in points off comic book sales.
Right.
So it's kind of hard to say that like, okay, well maybe one day this will be in a movie and maybe that movie will you make $1 billion, so I should get paid more money. Like it's
Right.
not necessarily the case. You don't know if that character ever will make it into a movie. If it does, the movie could suck. Like you just don't know. It's a tricky situation. John, as someone who reads a lot of comic books and watches a lot of movies, what is your headspace with this? Like, where do you think? Because I definitely, I'm on both sides here, and I totally see like, while there is no legal obligation for these companies, like these studios, to pay the creators anything, is there a moral obligation too? Do you think something should be outlined in contracts so it's a little bit more concrete that would like because of the climate we're in right now, like if X thing is used, maybe just something written in the contract that explicitly states the contract will be renegotiated for fair compensation if any of your characters are used in a movie that, makes a lot of money or something. I mean, something that's like vague enough to doesn't lock them into some huge payout, but also written there legally enough to say that there will be a renegotiation of compensation if that were to occur. I think that would be kind of the only way to really do it properly. But I don't know, because then you always have someone coming back like, well, you need to give me more, you give me more, you give me more. So it's a tricky situation. What do you think?
Sure. It's hard when you're talking about comics because comics have such a bad history of taking advantage of people to a certain extent. Bill Finger famously is the co-creator of Batman, arguably, the main creator, even though
Oh yeah.
for decades Bob Kane was attributed as the sole creator of Batman. And Bill Kane was famously referred to as anytime a comic book creator got screwed over by a comic book company, they would say he got fingered because of what happened to Bill Finger and his contributions to Batman. I mean, Bill Finger died penniless and destitute, and the guy created one of arguably the most famous comic book character of all time. So there's a very bad history when it comes to comics and publishers and them taking care of their creators fairly, even on the low end, just being fair to their creators. So that being said, I feel like, yeah, there's a history there where comic creators, that nobody envisioned that this was going to happen with these characters, and so there weren't things in contracts that laid out how these characters could be used and what kind of monetary payment should be made to creators that created these characters that are now worth so much. That being said, since about the 90s, early 2000s, it's well documented that what had happened in the past, and creators do have the ability now to to have a contract drawn up that more fairly compensate them. And if they don't like the terms, and I think this is a very important distinction. If you don't like the terms that DC or Marvel set forth with you for how your stories are going to be used and how you're going to be compensated, you don't have to work with them. You can go do your own thing and do independent creator comics, which some people do, and they have tremendous success. I mean, Todd McFarlane does Spawn at Image Comics and has created a whole empire off of his Spawn comic books. So you can have a great deal of success on your own. Part of working with DC and Marvel is you get the benefit of working with characters that are established. Even if you create new characters that, you create a new villain for Superman that ends up being like the coolest villain ever, and like his, takes over Lex Luthor as his arch nemesis, for the next 100 years. That's great, but you also got the benefit and the exposure of working with that character, and so not to diminish what your role was in the creation of that character, but anybody that creates things now, you kind of know what the rules are, what the framework is, and what you're doing. So I have a hard time, especially with anything that's been created in the past 20 or 30 years, feeling like creators are getting quote unquote screwed as far as that goes. I also feel like it's worth pointing out that I hate saying all this because I feel like I'm coming off as a shill for the companies. But I also feel like it's worth pointing out that there are thousands of comics printed every year that writers write that don't go anywhere and don't do anything. There are thousands of characters that are created that are never heard from again. That creators were paid money to create some sort of, addition to this character or this franchise, and it doesn't work out. The writers, whatever the writer comes up with, doesn't connect with the audience in the way they would hope, or the publisher, and those ideas fall by the wayside, and they got compensated for something that ultimately really didn't add any value that the publisher had hired them to add. So it works both ways. The creators still get paid even if the comic flops, but then the creators don't get paid necessarily when it takes off and works gangbusters. I think what you were saying about the moral part of it is ideally how I wish things worked. I wish that Marvel and DC and Warner Brothers would, and Disney, being the parent companies, would look at these situations and go, this writer X did write a story that's very similar that we based our movie around. And this movie made, millions of dollars, or, $1 billion. We should probably take that into consideration and come up with some sort of fair. But, unfortunately, that isn't necessarily the way the world works. And so, it's disappointing, but I also think, like, if you're a creator nowadays, if you're some sort of person or an author or a penciler, an inker, if you're involved in the creation of these things, then you need to make sure that you're covered and that you are covered adequately to what you think you should be covered. I mean, that's the other thing too. Like, I think people sign some of these deals thinking like, oh yeah, that'd be great if this thing took off and made $1 billion, but I'm happy with this now. But then when you start seeing the actual money, it's like not. Again, I feel like I'm being overly apologetic but it's like somebody that doesn't play the lottery and then their numbers come up and they're like, well, yeah, but I should get that money because I would have played the lottery if I had known, or like, sometimes these things are just a roll of the dice. Like, who knows which story is going to hit and go on to be such a big one. So I don't know. I'm on both sides. I wish the companies were fair about it. I also think I have a hard time with the creatives, especially nowadays, because everybody knows the game at this point.
Yeah, because that's the thing. Most of the time, like it's like an anomaly when something takes off like this. Like no one, if Ed Brubaker was, because that's the thing. Like I think the best example I could come up with, like that was, it's like a screenwriter getting hired to make a movie. They know what they're being hired to do. They're going to be paid fairly to what they think is fair for the job that they're doing. And if it's the kind of movie that could potentially make billions of dollars, and it's in the contract usually to have them get sort of back end points off it. But like unfortunately, maybe nowadays it could be different. And that's kind of like where my headspace is at. It's like, well, nowadays, if someone's coming in to write something for X thing, the potential of it becoming a movie is like more of a real thing than it ever was 20, 30, 40 years ago. So like there's
Yeah.
no way someone doing anything with a comic book could have ever imagined that something they did in a comic book would go on to make a movie and make $1 billion, something that there's no way they would have known. Like that, if they knew that was going to happen, they would have had that sort of thing ironed out in their contract. Just like a screenwriter who's going to make a movie knows that this movie has the potential to make X amount of dollars, so their agent's going to have something in there to have them fairly compensated based on the success of that movie. So I think the same thing should happen with comic writers nowadays. Like, have something outlined in there. Just say, if the time ever comes to where something is used of yours in a movie that is like loosely based upon or directly, picked up right off the page, then we will renegotiate some sort of compensation, adequate compensation for that. I think something like that needs to be drawn up. And if I was a like comic creator working today, that's what I would be trying to negotiate with any contract I did for either of these big companies, because like that chance of that happening is real. Like
Yeah.
they make their like comic book movies are huge right now. They're looking for any new material to make and anything. Like there's a very high possibility that your work could be adapted if you're writing like the Superman comics. If you're writing the Batman comics, there's a very high likelihood that that stuff could actually go to the screen. But you know that you're being hired in to write Batman. So that sort of contract is the kind of contract where you'd be like, look, if this becomes a movie in any way or my story is adapted in some way, I want a renegotiation of compensation based on how much money that movie makes and how much of my material is used in that movie, et cetera, et cetera. I think that's the best way to go about it. But yeah, unfortunately, it's designed people that happened to like 40, 50 years ago, kind of like they really are just kind of shit out of luck, and it's just shitty. Like at this point, there's really only a moral obligation at that point. Like if someone, if Disney wants to pay X person who wrote X Black Widow thing 30 years ago that they have now adapted, like this is kind of on them if they wanted to do that. But there's definitely not a legal obligation. But I don't know. I would imagine nowadays though it
It,
could be different. Like
it's the whole. I mean, in a way, it's not just an issue with. It's not just an issue with comics. It's an issue with it's an age-old problem with
Oh yeah.
a working class and working class citizenry and those that own the means of production. I mean, we're breaking it down. We're taking it specifically to talk about the comic book industry as a whole, but the workers that develop the newest iPhone apps, or the newest technology that is used in the iPhone, then the iPhone takes off and makes $1 million. Do those workers then shouldn't those workers morally, shouldn't those workers be given more than what they were just paid to, because it becomes such a bigger success than it ever, anybody ever thought it would be? Or just whatever the next new technological breakthrough is, like, all the people that put their time and effort into it, they got paid for that work, but shouldn't they be, compensated more? It's and morally, yes, but unfortunately, the way our society is set up, the way the business is set up, like there's not a court that goes in and looks at your contribution to any given thing and says, okay, you contribute the X amount, so you should get X amount of the revenue that comes from it. Just as there's no court that also goes and says, hey, you contribute X amount to this project that failed miserably and lost this much money, so you have to now kick back this much money to your employer because of it.
Oh
So
yeah.
it's a difficult situation. I see both sides of it, and I'm glad I don't have to make the ultimate decision on it.
Oh yeah, and that's the thing too. Like it's like an impossible thing to predict. Like 'cause
Yeah.
you never know what's going to happen, and it really is no different than is someone working at a gas station chain. They come up with a newfangled idea just to make the store run better, and then like the boss gets a bonus, and like because it was their store and it's doing something better, and it's like, but the guy who came up with the idea, who decided to do it, didn't get the bonus, and it's like, well,
Yeah.
it's just that's how it works. It's not fair, but that unfortunately is exactly how it works. Like it's like you were hired to come in and do your job and you're getting paid. Like if you're not happy with the wages while you're getting like doing the job, then you can leave. Like and that's just kind of
Mhm.
how the world works in every line of work really. It's just again, this is an anomaly where it's $1 billion, a movie kinda thing, so, like, I totally I wouldn't wanna be in either position like you said, in all honesty.
Yeah.
So, Rick, did you have anything you wanna add?
I think we covered most of it. I just think that people should work that stuff out in the beginning.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
now at least, people are starting to understand that. So
That's really the only way is, like, this specific situation could be handled. Like I said, in the end, I in today's climate, this could very well be drawn up in contracts when the artists or writers get hired in.
yeah.
They could put some sort of clause in there because the likelihood of this becoming a movie and making $1 billion is a very real thing. So, they could do that. I don't know if they would do it though at the same time. Like, I don't really know because at the same time, Warner Brothers owns the I or DC owns the IP.
Yeah.
It's theirs. Like, and it's like, like John says, like, coming in to working here that you don't own Batman. Like, you get to come in and play in that sandbox, but ultimately you don't own Batman. So it's a tricky situation. It really is. So I'm curious, you guys, what do you think about this? It's we all kind of think if it's an impossible situation. I do think there's some fair things, quote unquote, morally fair, maybe that you could outline in new contracts, but unfortunately, the way the world works, like anything like from the past is like kind of it's just a tricky conversation. It's a tricky situation rather. Whatever you guys think, let us know down in the comment section below. All right, guys. So our last topic is going to be a review of the first 3 episodes of the DC show Titans. They dropped the first 3 episodes, but first, old Rick Metz here is going to sign off because he hasn't seen Titans yet.
Maybe I'll
So
go home and watch it.
yeah, but why? Maybe watch the review first, and then maybe we'll see where
Yeah.
you want to go from there.
I honestly, I saw all the trailers and stuff, and I was just kind of like,
Yeah, we'll get into it here. But
Okay.
Rick, let everybody know where they can find you online.
Follow me at Sir Rick Metz. Follow me on Instagram.
All right, there it is. It was good having you here, Rick, and we'll
Always a
see you
pleasure.
again next week.
All right.
All right, see you later, sir.
See you.
Take
All
care,
right.
man.
See ya.
All right, so with Titans, my main thing with it, like I was telling you this, John. Titans is literally, and the spoiler alert here because we will get into spoilers with this. So if you haven't seen it, go watch it first. Obviously, see you later, Rick. Um, Titans is the only show that I like legitimately hate watch, and in that, like, there's things in there that are good. Like, it's got good scenes here and there, and I'm talking about all from the first 2 seasons as well. I'm talking the entire series right now. I felt like this throughout the entirety of the show. But it's just there's something where the show is, like, all like, to summarize it, it's, like, all payoff with just n no development. Like, it's like it's kind of like the all thriller, no filler kinda thing, but in a bad way. Because it's like they wanna do these, like, key storylines and do these cool things, like, let's have Batman in it, but then, like, Batman's in it and he just does something. You don't know why. There's no build up to it. It's just like Batman's here and he does it and then he goes. And it's like something like jarring, like for instance, with the Batman thing in this season, like Bruce Wayne is in like the first couple episodes or whatever, and he's just like unhinged Batman. Like he literally goes and kills the Joker and then just leaves town. And you don't really know why. They don't really set it up in any way. It just kind of happens, And it's like, I don't know, like, John, what were your overall thoughts of this season before I start jumping around too much? Because like I've felt like that for the entire series, where it's like they introduce a cool thing and like that cool thing happens and it's cool, but then like the story is always so disjointed too. Like it's weird. All the best parts of like season 2 were like the flashbacks with Aqualad, but then like Aqualad's dead, so it's like why you have like the best bits happening with a dead character. I don't know. It's just weird. What are your overall thoughts on the show and like this season so far?
Yeah, when we were messaging about earlier, I think I said something like, I like about 10% of the show. The other, 40% or 45% I tolerate, and then the other 45% I absolutely hate. They just I want to like the show. I should like the show. This show should be. They should. All I should have to do is turn on the TV, and I should love this show because that's how much I love the Titans. I love Dick Grayson. I love. I mean, I've got every volume of Marv Wolfman and George Perez's Teen Titans sitting next to me on my bookshelf right here. I've got the omnibus of all. I've got it in trades. I've got it in omnibus. I've got it digitally. I love the Teen Titans. I have all of Jeff Johns' Teen Titans run. I have Teen Titans from Dan Jurgens when it wasn't even any of the Teen Titans characters that are known in the DCU. They replaced them with all new characters back in the 90s. I got that entire run. Like I'm just a huge, and so this show, I should be like the easiest person in the world to appease with this show. And yet, like I said, 45 to 50% of the show I absolutely hate. It's like the show that your hardcore friend like would make. Oh man, I'm gonna make a show. I'm gonna make it badass, man. This show is gonna be so fucking cool, man. It's gonna be great. And then like, oh, we're gonna have Dick Grayson say fuck you, fuck Batman, because that's edgy. Like that's so cool. It's dark. It's cool. Like Dick Grayson said fuck Batman. Like, oh wow, that's it's like that's not clever writing. That's dumb. It's simple writing. It's weak. It doesn't. I don't know. So yeah, and it's been like that from the start. Like you said, things just happen. Robin scrapes somebody's face across glass to show how edgy and dark he is. Like there's no reason why he's edgy and dark. That they'll tell you he's edgy and dark, and he'll do that to show he's edgy and dark. But there's no build up to it. There's no rationale for it. It's just because the show is cool, man. It's cool because he's dark like that.
The character development is non-existent for all the characters.
No,
Like the
no.
only, and strangely enough, that's what I told you. Over in all 3 seasons, aside from the season 3 because it's only 3 episodes, but through all of seasons 1 and 2, the characters who got the most like actual character development in the show was Hawk and Dove. Like, I think
Mhm.
bar none, their characters, they dived more into their backstories, how they are as like individuals, et cetera, and they honestly probably should have because those two are the most well-known actors and they're the best actors on the show. So like it would
Yeah.
make sense to give them more screen time and do more things with them. But subsequently, it's Hawk and Dove who have no part of being in the Titans really for the most part. But like you give them all the stuff, but then you don't have it's not their show. So it's like you do all this stuff for them, but ultimately it's Robin or Nightwing's show, and Nightwing is like the flattest character. You have no idea what his motivations are. In one season, he hates Bruce Wayne, wants nothing to do with him. Then another season, he like wants his help, and then like in this season, he's like straight up working with him and wants him to come back after he leaves. And it's like hard to read, man. Like, what's happening here? Like literally in season one, the arc they presented was like he wanted to beat Batman because he thought Batman was going crazy and like he was gonna
Yeah.
kill people. And it's like they just completely like not to mention like the first season where it's like it was gonna be the Trigon stuff, but then they changed it to be the Batman stuff. So it's like they completely destroyed Trigon. And then in the next season when they did the Deathstroke stuff, it's like the Deathstroke stuff was cool when it actually focused on the Deathstroke stuff, but they didn't give anything like Deathstroke looked cool, I guess is the best way to go about it. And the actor who played Deathstroke was good, but they didn't give him anything to do. He just kind of showed up and kind of did the edgy Nightwing stuff or like the edgy Robin season one stuff. He just shows up and does something and then he's gone. And like that was it.
Yeah.
That was the whole series. And then, like I said, the best part about the whole season two wasn't the Deathstroke stuff. It was the stuff they did with Aqualad in the flashbacks, but they were flashbacks. So it's like, why are you telling more interesting stories about things that happened in the past with dead characters when you can't go anywhere with it? It's just like what I don't know where the writing's coming from. But then ultimately, what just killed me about this season so far was that, like I mentioned, and this again spoilers for anybody who's already not seen it and doesn't want to know anything, but they start this season off again, Hawk and Dove are like the best characters on the show, most, character development in general, best actors, and then they go on and they kill one of them
Mhm.
for really, like, no reason, like, it didn't have to happen. It's like they did it
Just
because they wanted you to feel stakes, but they didn't really lead up to it very well. It's just like it
but and
happens.
there's no motivation for why the
Yeah,
I mean, Red Hood ends up killing one of them, and there's no motivation for why Red Hood kills him other than
he
he
just does it.
wants to rule Gotham, and he's trying to I don't even, like,
I don't even
yeah,
know
he
what Red
just
Hood's doing either, like, it makes no sense.
yeah, it just I'm not really sure what his motivation is for killing him. Like, it's even played as a whole Joker gag. I mean, he does the Joker gag where he tells them it's gonna be one thing, but he lies and makes it something else, you know? Um, it's just a very uneven and the thing is, Jeff Johns is involved with this show. Jeff Johns has written, like I mentioned, he wrote the Titans. He wrote an entire run on the Titans, um, with, you know, Robin and Starfire, or Tim Drake Robin and Starfire and Superboy, and like I love that run. It's a phenomenal run on the Titans, and it's so good. And he's written so many other classic DC stories that have real heart and emotion to them, and things that I really like. And then Greg Berlanti has the whole Berlanti universe over on the CW show, which a lot of people don't like the shows, and I understand it. I understand that they can be kind of hokey and that they don't, you know, they're not everybody's cup of tea. But I love those shows, and it's because they're not all they're very character driven shows for the most part because they don't have the production budgets to do constant action scenes and huge fights and stuff. That kind of thing happens sparingly in those shows. Um, but yet somehow the two of them got together and you're left with this, like, you know, energy drink, you know, shot taking, cigarette smoking show. Like, I don't understand how those two came up with this particular show. I will say Season 2, I thought was better than season 1. Season 1
I
was a
agree.
mess.
Yep.
Season 1 was just from top to bottom an absolute dumpster fire. And
Mhm.
clearly, like you said, they were going to do Trigon, and then for some reason they didn't. And this was back when they were trying to make it for the DC Universe app. And I don't know if somebody came in and said, "Hey, we need to switch it because our app needs to do this," and it's not. I don't know what happened there, but it was an absolute mess. But then it seemed like they backed themselves into this gritty corner, and like they were like, "Oh, we can't go away from it." But yeah, the so seasons 1 and 2, I was hoping that season 3 would come back and be even better than season 2, that we would continue that progression of it getting better. And I have to say, the first 2 episodes of season 3, I thought were regressed. I didn't think they were nearly as good as some of the season 2 stuff. And I will say that the last episode, or episode 3 of season 3, I thought was a very good episode. It's the one where Hawk, well, I mean, we've already spoiled it, but Hawk dies. Hawk is the one that gets killed. And I thought it had some emotional weight to it. It had some good character interaction to it. I don't understand why they killed Hawk. I don't think it was a smart decision. I don't know why Red Hood why Red Hood goes after and targets Hawk. Other than the just like Red Hood knows that Hawk is the one that's coming after him. But
It's like a because
he
he
didn't.
can thing. It's like it does.
Yeah, I
Like
know, but
it doesn't make any
Hawk,
sense.
they give Hawk that big like, I'm going to take Jason down if I have to. You know, I'll do it because I'm the one that knows how to do it. And no sooner does he get done saying that than Jason calls him specifically
Right.
and targets him. Like the coincidence of Jason targeting him right after he gets done with that, him being the one to go after or to target him, just seemed a little too coincidental. Like
Oh
it was
yeah,
a
for
little too
sure.
much. Like it felt like something you would write for a show, not something that would happen naturally.
Oh yeah.
But what was I getting at? But like the whole beginning of this season, the very first 5 to 10 minutes of this season is the death of Jason Todd. And it is brushed over so quickly.
Oh yeah.
This is one
It's
of the most iconic storylines in all of DC Comics ever, was Jason Todd, Robin, the Batman of Batman and Robin, was killed by the Joker. And they cover that story in all of an episode. Like they show it happen with virtually no lead up to it. Jason just happens to stumble upon him.
it
And
just
then
happens.
and then he gets killed in 2 seconds, which I guess is fine because I guess we don't really need to drag that out. But he's killed when Bruce isn't even in town, so they take the idea of the death of Jason Todd, but they make it into something completely different. And then Bruce gets raked over the coals by Barbara Gordon for having a kid die, and turns around and kills the Joker, and then leaves Gotham. And that all happens in one episode. And I just felt like this is an iconic storyline. At least with the Phoenix Saga, the Dark Phoenix Saga, Fox at least gave the X-Men 2 movies to try and do it right.
Yeah.
I mean, they failed, but they at least tried to do it in 2
But
movies.
the second one was at least better.
It was at least better. But this show, I mean, like they took just this classic iconic story and just, oh, here it is, real quick, we're done. Okay, now it's over. Let's move on to whatever else next. It was just I wish, I hope one day in 20 years they release a documentary about the making of this show, because I imagine that it's people doing 5 other things and then coming in for 5 minutes a day and going, "Hey, we've got this Titan show. Where are we doing this week?" And one of them's like strung out on Red Bull and just goes, "What if we kill somebody this time?" And like, "Okay, yeah, let's do that." And all right, everybody break, go do your own thing, and we'll come back and do something else later.
Dude, I don't know
Like,
where they get the ideas for this show. And like just the way it's all done. Like
it's so chaotic.
yeah, dude, I never understand why anything's happening. I actually try to think back and remember like season 1, and I just get confused. I'm like,
Yeah.
but this happened and this
Barbara-
happened, but why did this happen? Like, wait, what? And it's like that's literally like as you're watching an episode, I find myself doing that. I'm like watching a scene play out, and I'm like, how did we get here? Like, what is like
Yeah.
what was like
And-
what happened? Like,
and they rely on like the comic book viewing audiences' knowledge of comic book stuff, but without ever really being clear about. Like Barbara Gordon has one leg. Like she's in the chair, yes, and anybody that sees Barbara Gordon in the chair should, and you're a comic book fan, automatically thinks Killing Joke. Joker shot Barbara Gordon, paralyzed her. She was put in a chair and became Oracle. But in this series, she's in the chair, but she's also only got one leg. So something else happened there. Like that's not just.
Dude, I'm gonna let
Was
you know
was it?
something right now. This show is so bad, I didn't even realize she had one leg.
Yeah.
I had no idea, and I've watched it.
We,
I had no idea that was even a thing. Like, I had
yeah.
no idea.
And I don't know if
Okay.
it's just the actress that they got is
Maybe, yeah, I don't
that's
know.
her, and that's why they went. But like, there would be nice to have some sort. And then they just casually dropped it. Alfred's dead and James Gordon is dead, but no reason why they're dead. And like, it's all over the place.
This
It's
show constantly, it's the complete opposite of show don't tell, which is what every movie and TV show should do. It should show you the story. They just tell you everything and just expect you to just be on board with it and just go with it. Like this
or they
show,
don't tell you and make you infer it. Like,
yeah,
oh,
exactly.
well,
Like
this must be the only way this makes sense. The only reason it makes sense that Barbara's in a wheelchair and is missing a leg is that, she was in a, something other than the Killing Joke happened to her. Something else happened to this Barbara Gordon.
Yeah.
I don't know what, but something else.
Like, I hate to say it, but like, I don't want to discredit anybody who cosplays, but like, this show feels like some people got together who cosplay and just made a fan film half the time.
It does. That's a great. That is a
Like,
great.
that's what it
Yeah,
seems like. It's
it
just
does.
like it's
It
like
does.
the scenes happen, and it's like the best
And they were
way.
given.
It just like here's a setup for a scene. Go.
They
And
were
they just
given a
do it.
production budget. Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Because like I will say, like the show it's all shot good. Like when
Mhm.
Nightwing and Red Hood fought, there wasn't shaky cam. Like it was a fight
Yeah.
scene, and it was
Yeah.
choreographed pretty good for TV standards. Like it was
And like I
fine.
said, about 10% of the show I like, and stuff like that I really like.
Yeah, the suits look
I'm
decent. Like
Yeah.
like another character they don't know. Like they don't know what the fuck to do with Starfire. Like she's got so much different stuff going on. None of it makes any fucking sense. I don't know who she's talking to. Like she keeps calling this therapist person. Who the fuck is that? I don't remember
Oh,
seeing
it's
this
some random
person.
guy. Yeah, I actually do remember him. He was a random guy that she hooked up with for like 20 minutes in season 1.
In season
Yeah,
1?
yeah, in season 1 when she like
How am I supposed to
when
remember
she's
this?
first yeah, when she first gets to Earth or whatever, or she's
Yeah.
making her way around town. Remember, like when she first came out, she had like the big
Yeah,
fur thing that
yeah.
she was wearing and stuff, and like she was working for like a pimp or something. Like I don't know, but like she ends up with that guy at a Vegas hotel at one point, and it was so random. Yeah.
Yeah, I had no idea. Like, I was just like, I guess she started seeing a therapist at some point. Just like another, because like I just come to expect the show not giving me information, and I just have to go with whatever they're like showing and telling me. And like, I just assumed she started to see a therapist or something. Like, I had no
Well,
idea what the hell's going on. Like,
another tell is Raven, who is such an integral part of seasons 1 and 2,
oh,
hasn't been seen in the first
where's
3
she
episodes.
at?
And all we get is one line from I can't remember who says it now, but at one point somebody says, "Oh, Raven's on Themyscira trying to bring back Donna." Like,
I didn't even catch
okay,
that.
you couldn't even show us, like, you couldn't cut away to a scene on Themyscira and give us some sort of context and some sort of idea about what Raven's doing. You're just going to tell us like offhandedly, "Oh yeah, this major character that you know was such an integral part of the show, and you're not going to see her for a while because she's doing this." I assume that we won't see Donna's resurrection. I'm assuming Raven will just show up with Donna at some point and be like, "Yeah, I brought her back to life. All right, what's going on next?" Like, it's just so.
And then they don't even show you like what. Like there was even a scene where Nightwing was talking to Red Hood after he finds out it's Jason Todd, and Jason Todd like tells him like he wants $50 million or whatever. And Nightwing even says like, "What do you want with the money? You don't even need it." Like, this is not about
Yeah.
money. And it's like, that's a situation where we as an audience should know what Red Hood is really doing,
Yeah,
but we
what his
don't.
motivations are.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
we don't. So it's like the Nightwing in the show is in the situation like we are, where it's like, dude, I don't know what he's doing either. None of it makes sense because Red Hood wouldn't need the money. It's weird.
Well,
Like,
and the other thing that doesn't make any sense, I don't know. I honestly don't believe they're going to even try and address it or explain it away. But this all seems to take place in the course of like a couple weeks. Like Jason gets killed by the Joker. Dick gets the call that Jason has died. Dick returns back to Gotham days later, maybe even a day later, finds Bruce. Bruce says, "Oh, I took care of the funeral already. Jason's dead and buried at this point."
yeah,
And so it isn't like months have passed. This is all taking place within the matter of days, if not, weeks, if not days. And we find out in the latest episode that somebody that works for Jason took his body away from the morgue, and so that implies that Jason set this all up to be killed by the Joker and then come back as Red Hood. And then so that's this big elaborate plan on Jason's part that we have no idea why he would be doing in the first place. Yet his motivation for going after the Joker and him being killed by the Joker was shown to us as if it really happened the way it was described. Like, you see the Joker standing over his body, swinging a crowbar and killing him.
yeah.
Like, I can't imagine that was part of Jason's plan. But yet everything else seems to be like it's just so weird.
No, yeah, and then like they showed him like using what I assumed was venom, but
Yeah.
what was it? Like they still because that's like a looming like the Bat computer can't even determine what this substance is, and it's like of all things, like it's like is that just a red herring? Does that have anything to do with this at all? Like, because like honestly, like Jason Todd using some sort of performance enhancing drug or something, what the hell does that have to do with like why he wants to kill the Titans all of a sudden? Because that's the
Yeah.
other thing. It's like we don't know why he has just gone on this journey. Like, you know what I mean? It's like the show just starts, Robin dies instantly, and then all of a sudden he's Red Hood and wants to kill everybody.
Yeah.
Why?
Within a matter of days, he's back in Red Hood. I
Yeah, it's not. It's like, well, why? Like you have to. And that's the thing I was telling you. It's like none of it feels earned. It all just happens. That's what like I didn't like about Hawk dying. It's like that wasn't earned. It's just like the situation gets set up and executed and just randomly in the third episode of the show. And it's like there was no
Mhm.
like the real setup to it. The stakes aren't really there. Like they are if you just look at it in a vacuum. I get what you're saying, where like the episode at least is well done and there's emotional weight to it all and whatnot. But it's not like we've had this whole season of Red Hood and this mystery of Red Hood and like he's picking people off left and right and like things are getting tense and then now the one of the Titans is being taken by Red Hood. It's like no, all those stakes are gone because we know it's Jason and he's just fucking with people. But we don't know
Yeah.
why. So it didn't to me it was like there's no stakes here because all the tension was just gone immediately because we know it's Red. We know who it is already. They know who it is already, and he just got duped. And now there's a bomb in him. It's like
Yeah.
okay, again things just kind of happen, and it's just like it really is all thriller no filler. But like the filler's important in these situations because like things just
Mhm.
fucking happen, man. Like, and I'll keep watching the show. I told you, like, I'll keep watching it because I like the Titans. And every once in a while, they're like not this iteration of the Titans. I like the Titans, like who they
Mhm.
really are. I like the actual characters. And no one in the show is necessarily bad in their roles by any means. Like, I think given the right material and the right, director and stuff, this cast could be good iterations of these characters. Maybe. But the material they're given and the way they execute everything in the show is just it's not good on a consistent basis, like in any way.
I yeah. I actually like the cast. I think
Yeah,
the
I
woman
don't
that plays
mind them.
Starfire, I think she's really good. I think Hawk and Dove, they are excellent. I think the kid that plays Gar, Logan,
He's great.
is Changeling. I think he's great. The kid that plays Superboy is a little stiff, but I
He is
think that
very stiff.
maybe actually that may be him just playing it that way because Superboy is stiff. I mean, I think I'm taking it that that's an intentional, and the guy that plays Nightwing, he's fine. He's good. I think he's kind of right in the middle of the road there as far as the rest of the cast goes.
He's just written so flat. That's his problem. 'Cause
Yeah,
I think he's
yeah.
fine. I think they all could be fine. It's just like the material they're given does not help them. Like,
No,
and
no,
it's
not at all.
like I feel bad for him more than anything because I feel like that crew of people could make a really good show.
Yeah.
Like they could make a
And
good cast of the Titans, but
the
it's not.
costumes are pretty good for the most part. Yeah, the Nightwing costume. There are a couple scenes where I've seen it. And I look at it and I go, "Oh, that looks a little funny from that angle." Like
It
I
looks
think they
kind of
do a
bulky or
pretty.
padded. Like
Yeah, yeah. There's something a little off on it at times.
I think it should. It
But
feels too much like a suit of armor.
yeah.
Like just on the chest plate and then on the legs too. I feel like it should be a little bit more Christian Bale, The Dark Knight kind of thing, where it's like a little bit more mobile. Like
I also feel like they
I
need
don't know.
something in the middle to break it up. Like
Yeah, it feels like
it
literally a
sticks.
suit of armor.
Yeah, yeah,
Very
yeah.
stiff
But I
looking.
mean, but all things considered, I've seen much worse costumes in shows, and so it's
Yeah.
fine. I'll take it. But that should be like the if that was the least of my problems, I would love the show. I think it's great. It's all the other it's the writing. It's
Yeah, man, look
literally
at the
the
CW
way the show
Flash
is written
suit.
and
It was
told.
never amazing. Like,
Yeah.
but the show was
And
fine.
I mean, Crypto, I have one of my favorite characters, maybe my favorite. I have a hard time picking my favorite comic book character, but definitely one of my top 5 comic book characters of all time is Crypto. And this show has a freaking live action Crypto. So
Sure.
they've got me. You know, they can continue to turn Batman into a murderer and kill the Joker, which obviously we've talked about my issues on past episodes with how I don't think Batman should kill, and I don't I hate that. I hate when writers fall back on that as
If
a
it's earned,
actual
it's
thing.
different. Like
See,
I need a
I don't
reason.
think it can be earned.
I need a
But
reason. Like this isn't a
but
reason. Like it just fucking
regard
happens.
yeah, but I mean, but as long as they've got a live action Crypto who literally has super bark and flies and has heat vision, I mean, I'm done. They got me. Like I will be with this show as long as, and I'll sit there and hate myself for watching it up until Crypto shows up, and then I'll smile like a 5-year-old kid for those few seconds that he's on. But
I mean, I'm like so far in, I can't stop watching it. Like I don't know.
like I said, I kept hoping that season 2 got a little better. I kept hoping this one would get a little bit better. It's just they have a hard way. I mean, even look, I'm gonna knock stuff around. Even in like they just can't not be they they're not edgy because they're good at like there isn't real emotional edge to this show. It's all forced emotional edge. Like Barbara
Mm.
Gordon in the first episode, fuck Batman, fuck Bruce Wayne. Like Barbara Gordon running around cursing left and right somehow makes her tougher or cooler or whatever. Like you can't come up with a way to show that she's a strong, tough woman. So you're just going to throw a couple F bombs and that all of a sudden will make her cooler or tougher. Like it feels like a cheap way to do it.
Yeah, they're telling you she's tough instead of
Yes.
showing that she's a tough person.
Yes.
Like, exactly. They do that with a lot of the dialogue. Like,
Yeah.
they make Nightwing do the same thing like all the time. Just like well, I don't give a fuck or whatever. Like something happens
Yeah.
where it's just like, all right, we get it. Like it's a bad situation. Like okay. All right.
And I understand that, like, I'm going to come off as the old man, like, get off my lawn here, or back in my day. But like, I've read comics for a long time. Comics are not. Comics don't lean into bad language. Like, I'll drop an F bomb here or there in everyday conversation with my friends all day long. I have plenty of friends who curse like sailors. I'm not offended by by cursing. However, I grew up reading comics, and that's not a commonplace thing. Like, if you use it, it's usually used for emphasis or to really drive home a point. The way they
Dramatic
talk on this
purpose.
show, yeah, for dramatic purpose. On this show, it's just they just throw it in there. Like, I think they're trying to use it for dramatic purpose, but they're using it every other scene for dramatic purpose. Like,
Mhm.
oh, we dropped 7 F-bombs this episode. That's how dark and gritty our show is.
They're just
Like,
earning their R
no, you're
rating,
just
yeah. Like,
yeah, no,
it's like
you're just bad writers. I mean,
yeah.
no, you can't come up with a better way to show this character his thoughts or feelings. So I don't know.
That's what
It
ultimately
is what
comes
it
down
is.
to. It's just the writing, dude. It just the writing's not good. Like
Yeah.
it's not consistently good because I think we've both said like they're few and far between, but there is some good in there. But
There were
you
moments
have to struggle to find it. You really do.
there have been moments between Nightwing and Raven where like those characters get like these tiny little moments where they're allowed to break free of this dark and gritty like persona they're supposed to be in, and they have like real like character connections and moments that like they're great actors and they do a good job with the material, but then the next scene they're right back to, oh, you gotta make sure people know dark and gritty.
Yeah, it's I don't know what it is. I'd like to, like you said, a documentary or a behind the scenes thing, just being a fly on the wall of like a day in
Yeah.
production of this show. Like, I'd love to spend a day in the writer's room, spend a day on set, just to see how the fuck it's done. Because how this stuff comes on the screen in the format that it does is honestly kind of baffling to me. Like it's because
Yeah.
I'm legitimately more confused watching this show than I was watching Memento for the first time. Like I'm more confused watching this than watching things that are explicitly designed to be a mind
Be
fuck.
confusing. Yeah.
Like, yeah, like I'm literally this show is more confusing, and that's not a
Yeah.
good thing, like, at all, because it's not trying to be confusing, it just is. Like, it's just it's
What
so
did
strange.
what did you think about Scarecrow?
Eh, like, I did not
Yeah.
like it, like, it's just
Like,
eh.
it's fine that they brought him in there, but I felt like all his scenes were kind of pointless.
It
Like,
could've been
I don't
anybody,
know exactly. I don't know
like
why they're bringing him in to help. And first of all, it also kind of makes Dick seem like a kind of ineffective. Yeah, this kid was supposedly trained by Batman, the world's greatest detective, and he's going to the Scarecrow for help analyzing why criminal is doing something. Like,
yeah,
it
it's
just,
strange.
yeah,
That
odd
is kind of
choice.
odd. Like, I feel like it could've been 'cause, I mean, there's been times, like, I mean, you look in a Long Halloween, they consulted with Calendar Man. So, I mean, it's not
Hmm.
unprecedented, I guess, but, like, we really haven't gotten any information out of Scarecrow that Dick couldn't have came up with on his own, I don't think.
Yeah,
So, like, to that point, I totally agree. It'd
like
be different if
he literally misses Dick misses the fact that the note to Nightwing is written on the back of a chess
yeah,
manual.
yeah, how do you not it's like, did you turn it around? It's right
Yeah, yeah.
there. So,
The
fuck,
Riddler
I
has
didn't
to
turn
point
it
it out to
around.
him.
Yeah, like,
Oh
oh,
shit! Oh
Jesus.
man, there's other. Wait a minute, you're saying paper has two sides?
Yeah,
What
this
the?
is double-sided paper?
Oh my
Jesus.
goodness!
No, yeah, because like, it'd be different if something like I don't know, like, it just there was no need for it to be Scarecrow in the end. Like, him getting help is one thing, throwing Scarecrow in for, like, kinda no reason, also because it's not even something that Scarecrow would be good at. Like, they're not having
Yeah.
him directly analyze
Oh
the
sure.
like,
Scarecrow's.
somebody, like, he's a psychiatrist, like, he's not
Yeah.
a profiler, like, like, they're literally looking for, like, an FBI
Well, and
profiler, so it's like, it's not really the same thing,
his
but
whole thing is fear. Like,
yeah.
there are other Batman villains that they could have gone with that would have maybe given
Frankly,
you. I don't
Calendar
know.
Man would have been a better choice for this,
Yeah.
like, in all honesty, because like, he's just a weirdo criminal who would actually profile somebody like he did in The Long Halloween. It was the same concept. It really would have made more sense for it to be Calendar Man. Like, If you were gonna
I
use some named villain, like,
sure.
but like
I
it could have just been the FBI and an FBI profiler. They could have cut all the scenes out and just said, "Here's the FBI profile." That's all it needed to be.
and then they could have given more time to actually develop the characters and let
Yeah.
us know why Jason has decided to become the Red Hood and go rogue.
Yeah, because here's my biggest worry with the show, is that we're gonna get this big revelation, and it's just gonna be dumb. Because like,
Yeah.
it's just gonna be stupid. Like, it's like, "Oh, wow." So, like, you kept us in the dark and made the show ultimately worse by withholding this information for this? Like, that's the
Mhm.
thing? It's like, okay,
Yeah.
like, I don't know. Like, it's all a simulation just to train Dick to be the best Batman ever. It was all fake, you know? Like, it's gonna be something stupid. Like,
Yeah.
that would almost be better. It was just like, okay, I'll accept it if it was all fake. That explains why it was bad. It was all a dream. Like, no. You got anything else you wanna add?
No, I think I've bitched enough for tonight.
Yeah, same. It's been honestly, dude, I felt like the whole show was just like a lot of bad things. All the news was like somewhat of like negative things. Not that we were
Yeah.
being negative. It was just, where's the, like, oh yeah, we got a new trailer for
You see
this.
this awesome new
Yeah, it's just like, oh
nothing.
yeah, we got this is happening and this is happening. Here's how I think they could make this better. Like, it was all
Yeah.
just like, I don't know. It was like
Maybe
putting
maybe next
band-aids.
week will be better.
I hope
Get
so.
that Spider-Man trailer.
The Spider-Man trailer will save everybody. Unfortunately, we won't. It would be 2 weeks before
Still a
that.
couple weeks away.
Yeah, at the earliest. We'll have to see. I definitely think we'll have that by CinemaCon, though. I do think that, but we'll see. But nevertheless, John, where can everybody find you online here?
Nightwing_K over on Twitters and Instagrams.
All right. And as always, thanks for coming on the show, John. Always a pleasure. And you can follow me simply at Sir Rob Bifo here on all social media platforms of choice. Other than right here, it's just Rob Bifo. Nevertheless, don't forget that you can submit topics and questions to the show by emailing us here at honestandUneducated@gmail.com. That's honestandUneducated@gmail.com. And then again, you can find if you don't always have time to watch this on YouTube, rather, you can find the podcast audio only version of the show on your podcast platform of choice to search Honest and Uneducated. And but yeah, that'll do it for today, guys. Appreciate you watching. Be sure to like and subscribe and do all that sorts of fun stuff. But then until next time, take care.